Chapter 11. When he opened his eyes again, the sky had turned dark, and Fu Yin greeted him with a smile. "Little beauty, you're finally awake. You've slept for 3 days this time." Bai Jing propped up his hands and jumped out of the medical cabin with agile movements. With the jump just now, he could feel the huge change in his body, as if he had broken away from the heavy body, filled with an endless sense of lightness. And his perception seemed to have been greatly enhanced, but it could not be verified for a while. Turning on the brain, Bai Jing found that his basic data had changed. ID 105-316-6247. Name: Bai Jing. Sex: male. Age: 18. Status: citizen of the Galactic Empire. Gene level: C level, formerly D level. Physical fitness level: A level, formerly B level. Mental strength level: A level. Skill name: none. Both the genetic level and the physical level have increased by 1 level, but the mental level has not changed. This is somewhat different from what Bai Jing thought. He can clearly feel the increase in his perception. Congratulations, the genetic decay has been completely cured. The most amazing thing is that your body has actually caused a mutation during the healing process, improving your genes and physical fitness level. This is a 1-in-1 probability. Fu Yin pushed the gold glasses on the bridge of his nose and said with a smile, "For the sake of my treatment, would you like to give me a hug?" "No thanks." Bai Jing refused expressionlessly. "Excuse me, what is the cost of the treatment?" "This is unnecessary. Young Master Gu has already paid for it." As soon as Fu Yin finished speaking, Bai Jing walked to the door. "Hey, little beauty, don't you really want to hug me?" The answer to him was a loud bang sound of the door closing. Fu Yin touched his nose angrily. Alas, the little beauty is just as ruthless as Gu Xiao. Bai Jing took the suspended train home. This time, he was no longer dizzy by the galloping high speed as before, but adapted to this speed. This is the change brought about by the special gene fluid, and now he is almost no different from the interstellar aborigines. Back in his small suite, Bai Jing took a comfortable hot shower as soon as he walked in. Although the medical cabin is in sterile mode and won't come into contact with dirt, he still washes himself carefully before putting on a clean robe. After blow-drying her hair, Bai Jing spent 50,000 star coins to buy enough ingredients to fill the entire storage room. The preservation technology of interstellar food is very advanced, which can preserve the activity of the food to the maximum extent. Even if it is stored for several months, the nutrients will not be lost at all. Looking at the pile of ingredients, he felt an unprecedented peace of mind. In the last days, food is scarce, and only in this way will he feel safe. Dinner is a plate of oily braised pork and a plate of fried lotus root slices. The braised pork is fat but not greasy. The lotus root slices are crisp and refreshing, and Bai Jing is very satisfied. After the meal, he summed up the experience of gambling stone in Guzwell area a little bit, and carried out in-depth study corresponding to the knowledge points. Bai Jing also learned later that the agreement he signed with the Gu family stipulated that the annual salary of 5 million star coins was equivalent to the salary of a senior stone gambler in the market, and he was not even a stone gambler apprentice now. A ray of doubt suddenly surged in Bai Jing's heart. Does young Master Gu trust him so much? Or what did he find? In any case, since the agreement was signed, he must become a stone gambler as soon as possible, otherwise he will not be able to get this reward with peace of mind. It took 2 days to integrate the knowledge points, and Bai Jing came to Gu's number 5 wool area early in the morning, intending to test how far his perception has improved. He turned on his brain, and his personal account showed that there were still more than 700,000 star coins. You can go and see what the performance of higher-level wool materials is, and expand your horizons by the way. Bai Jing went directly to the B-grade wool area. The price of grade B wool is between 100,000 and 1 million stars. The display cabinet is much better than the E area. It uses a white marble countertop, and there is a bottom bracket under each piece of wool to prevent the wool from wearing. In addition, there are induction infrared rays and guards with guns next to the stone platform to ensure the safety of the wool. The amount of wool in the B-grade wool area is relatively small, only 1/5 of that in the E area. Bai Jing looked at it in turn and found that there was no obvious flaw in any piece of wool material. All of them were fine leather and sand leather of good quality. The surface was covered with pine flower python belts, and there was no coarse leather. The scraps of 500 star coins per kilogram can't really be compared with these hundreds of thousands of star coins. Thinking like this, Bai Jing picked a piece of white sandskin that performed well and tried it. Perception quickly penetrates into the wool material, and the active reaction is not strong. It should be the most common bean species. It is a pity that this bean sea jadeite is not big, only about 2 or 3 kilograms. Take a look at the price of this piece of wool material numbered A12, 200,000 star coins. Bai Jing looked away. The price of jade inside was far from the price of wool itself. He continued to use his perception to detect 7 or 8 wool materials. According to his opinion, the performance of these wool materials is very good, and there is a high probability that emeralds will be produced. However, after using perception, it was found that there was only one piece of jadeite inside, and the piece of wool with jadeite was not the one that performed better, but the one that he thought was the worst. This discovery broke Bai Jing's cognition and made him realize that his understanding of gambling stones was too superficial, and it was undoubtedly a waste of time to look at it with such a half-knowledge. After thinking about it clearly, Bai Jing no longer specifically judged the quality of wool, but focused on testing the limits of abilities. Perception penetrated into piece after piece of wool material, until the 16th piece of wool material was detected. Bai Jing felt the familiar dizziness, and hurriedly supported the edge of the marble table. After the strong dizziness passed, Bai Jing came to the final conclusion. His current perception limit is 15 times, which is a full 1/3 increase. It seems that the 10 special-grade gene fluids not only cured his genetic decay, but also greatly improved his abilities. Only, he looked at the judgment that the mental power level on the attribute panel was still A level, and had a guess in his heart. Could it be that his perception power and the mental power of this era are two completely different abilities? If this is the case, he needs to keep this secret well and must not reveal the slightest. At night, Bai Jing followed the steps he found on the Star Network, logged in to the official website of the Stone Gambling Association, and registered his personal information. The certification of the Stone Gambling Association is extremely strict, and it must be connected to the optical brain for real name certification to ensure the authenticity of the spiritual power level. Bai Jing sent the video data of how he solved the bean CJ to the guild mailbox. After a few minutes, the voicemail returned, and after opening, a sweet female voice came. Congratulations to Bai Jing, a citizen of the Empire with ID 105-316-6247, who successfully passed the primary review of the Gambling Stone Apprentice. Spiritual Power Level A Level Pass. Successfully bet up once in the Gambling Stone. Pass. Please attend the training at 10 a.m. on May 1st, 835 Ephemeris at the second block of the main city of Proxima Centauri, Gambling Stone Branch, and 1 month later to participate in the final assessment of the Gambling Stone Apprenticeship held by the headquarters. The training fee is 10,000 stars. Please pay the fee as soon as possible and sign the training confidentiality agreement. Thank you. Bai Jing quickly manipulated the optical brain to complete the payment, signed the non-disclosure agreement, and sent it back. A smile appeared in those beautiful brown eyes. What he needs most at the moment is the study of the knowledge system of gambling stones, and this training is like giving charcoal in the snow, and the timing is just right. Bai Jing is indeed very lucky. The assessment of the Stone Gambling Apprentice is only once a year. If he misses it, he will have to wait until the next year, and the time for his registration is just right. At this time, there was less than a week before the training, and Bai Jing couldn't help but start to look forward to it while searching for information on the Star Network. In the early morning of the same day, Bai Jing took the morning suspended train to the second largest block in the main city of Proxima Centauri, occupying almost half of the street's address of the Gambling Stone branch of Proxima Centauri. The building of the branch is an antique European-style building, which is more magnificent because of its wide area. The pure white appearance is elegant and atmospheric, and the reliefs are lifelike. Looking closely, the surface of the building is coated with a layer of extremely expensive nanomaterials, which has a delicate and restrained luster. It is retro and luxurious. It is unique among the future buildings, as smooth as a mirror, and can be recognized at a glance. According to reports, among the more than 100 planets ruled by the Empire, the Stone Gambling Guild has branches on the top 20 planets. The headquarters of the Stone Gambling Guild is located in the most prosperous capital city of Star City, a place worthy of the name. The Proxima branch is the third largest, after Mobixing and Juwaxing. Standing outside the door, Bai Jing took a closer look at this huge, palace-like building, and then swiped the optical brain on the detector at the door, showing that the verification was passed. Under the instructions of the robot at the front desk, he came to the training room number 8. Since it was still early, there was no one in the empty training room for the time being. Bai Jing looked at the layout of the room and found a seat in the middle of the first row, intending to listen carefully in class and absorb as much knowledge as possible. After 9 o'clock, other people pushed the door one after another and entered. Most of them were young boys and girls in their 14th or 15th-year-old season. Besides, there were also a few young people in their 20s. Most of them are well-dressed, boys in smooth silk shirts and trousers, girls in tailored suits or gowns, and some even handcrafted haute couture. This is also normal. Stone gambling is an industry that burns money. What's more, the level of stone gambling masters depends on points and winning rate. Without sufficient financial support, it is impossible to obtain enough points and experience. As soon as the group of luxuriously dressed young men and women entered the door, they saw Bai Jing sitting in the first row, and they all showed expressions of surprise and contempt. The humble t-shirt and trousers, and the black-rimmed glasses with dirt on the bridge of the nose. This guy doesn't come from the slums, does he? Now the people in the slums also have money to gamble on stones? Let's go and sit in the back. The girl who was surrounded by the stars and the moon in the center was extremely gorgeous, with an arrogance in her eyebrows that could not be ignored. She wears a royal blue long skirt with sloping shoulders, with delicate diamonds hanging at the tail, and the perfect cut completely outlines her slender waist, which is very valuable at first glance. The girl took out the spa and waved it in the air with disgust, as if she was afraid of being infected by this poor and sour gas, and sat straight to the 6th row. Okay, Yuxuan, we all listen to you. Everyone agreed. This girl was the second largest wool miner in Proxima Centauri after the Gu family, Ning Yuxuan, the youngest daughter of Ning Qiuqian. The Ning family is a veritable noble family. The Galaxy Wool area on the main street is the property of the Ning family. With countless wool resources, it is inevitable for Ning Yuxuan to become a stone gambler. The crowd gathered around Ning Yuxuan diligently, sarcasm by Jing, who was sitting in front from time to time, in order to please the other party. If you can get the favor of Ningjia Mingzhu, maybe you can enjoy a lot of discounts when you go to buy wool. It's a pity that no matter how they taunted them, Bai Jing couldn't hear them. With sound-blocking earplugs plugged into his ears, he was focusing on the knowledge of gambling stones on the light screen, completely ignoring everything in the outside world. This was the idea he had when he heard the frenzied shouting of the fans in the gambling stone shop last time. Fortunately, the Interstellar technology developed this kind of small and lightweight earplugs, which are very suitable for taking out and using at any time. Near 10 o'clock, there were more than 60 people in the training room. Most of them came from noble or wealthy families, and there were only 4 or 5 civilians. The latter bowed his head and timidly walked towards the last row, causing the young men and women to sneer, but did not dare to refute at all. In the huge classroom, Bai Jing was the only person sitting in the first 5 rows, but his expression was calm, and he didn't feel the uneasiness and anxiety of being isolated. In the back, a young man named Ngu secretly looked at Bai Jing, who was sitting in front, with extremely complicated emotions in his eyes. He was also born in a slum. When he was a child, he accidentally entered the restricted area because of playfulness, and was caused by cosmic radiation to cause an extremely rare mutation. His mental power directly changed from D level to top level S level, and thus received the support of the aristocratic Shen family. But the Shen family will only subsidize his tuition fees and gambling training expenses, and other expenses such as living expenses are earned by his own hard work. A month before the training, he worked until late at night every day, drinking only half a bottle of nutrient solution for each meal, and finally saved 2,000 star coins by frugality every day. Just yesterday, Ngu gritted his teeth and bought a set of well-crafted clothes with all the star coins he had accumulated, just because he didn't want others to know that he was from a slum. He couldn't stand the contemptuous and mocking gazes of those noble disciples. Those gazes were like knives, inch by inch lingering on his self-esteem, so that he would never be able to lift his head up. But at this moment, looking at the young man sitting in the first row with a straight back and an indifferent face, Ngu was shocked and full of admiration. At least he couldn't be so calm and calm. He lowered his head, and his thin, calloused fingers unconsciously clenched the corners of his clothes, and a feeling of fullness emerged in his heart. What is it then? He does not know. Just the moment he saw Bai Jing, Ngu felt that what he had always cared about didn't seem to be that important anymore. Chapter 12. When it was almost 10 o'clock, Bai Jing took off his earplugs. After a few minutes, a fat boy panted and pushed open the door, looked around the room, and sat next to Bai Jing with a bang, his round face full of smiles. "Hello, my name is Jin Mao." Bai Jing. Bai Jing turned his head to look at him and reported his name politely. The other party was wearing high-quality clothes, with a space button around his neck that could store objects, and the light brain on his wrist was also the latest style. It could be seen that his family was good, but he was sitting with him for some reason. "Is it Bai Jing? Your name is so nice." Jin Mao was a familiar one. He smiled at Bai Jing, glanced at the young men and women sitting in the back row, rolled his eyes and whispered, "Heh, I just can't get used to those rich kids who look higher than the top, look down on one and look down on that all day long. What's so great? Here, those who can pass the final assessment are the strongest." "Is the assessment difficult?" Bai Jing keenly grasped the word. He wanted to check the matters needing attention on training and assessment, but only found sporadic information on the Star Network, which shows that the assessment content has not been made public. "It's very difficult. Although the stone gambling apprentice is not high, it is the only way to get to the stone gambling master, and the examination questions every year are extremely abnormal. And no matter the number of applicants, only the top 100 are taken each time, and the pass rate is terrifyingly low. Like the ones in the back, many of them are taking the test for the second or even the third time." "Ahem, it's my second time too." Jin Mao scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Last time he didn't even say he was in the top 100. He didn't even enter the top 500. There are too many people participating in the Gambling Stone Apprenticeship Assessment every year, ranging from a few thousand to tens of thousands, and the competition is fierce. Judging from this year, the number of this training room is 8, and there are more than 60 students in each training room. In this way, there are more than 500 people participating in the assessment in Proxima Centauri alone. All the planets of the entire empire together. I am afraid there are more people than in previous years. Cough. Although the question is abnormal, the top 30 who pass the assessment will get corresponding points. 5 points for the top 10, 3 points for the 11 to 20, and 2 points for the 21 to 30. The requirement for a first-level stone gambler is that the points reach 5 points. If you can get the top 10, you can be directly promoted from a stone gambling apprentice to a first-level stone gambling master. Jin Mao said a little excitedly, and when he talked about the back, his face couldn't help blushing. "That's 5 points. According to the regulations, every time a bet goes up 1 point, 5 points means that the bet goes up 5 times. Even according to the probability of losing 9 out of 10 bets, at least 50 games of stone betting are required. If you are unlucky, you don't know how many times." After listening to Jin Mao's words, Bai Jing silently set a goal in his heart, that is to get the top 10 in the assessment at any cost. As long as he becomes a first-level stone gambler, he can represent the Gu family in the stone gambling battle, and he can also repay Gu Yuanchao's favor as soon as possible. At 10 o'clock sharp, a middle-aged man dressed in a white retro robe with a pentagram pattern on his chest came to the training room. His expression was very serious. His sharp eyes glanced around the classroom, and the room was suddenly silent. The middle-aged man inserted the black memory chip into the holographic device, and after adjusting the angle, he began to introduce himself. "My name is Gao Ling, and everyone can call me Teacher Gao. Next, we will learn from the origin and characteristics of the planet to learn how to distinguish the field of wool and the type of leather." Bai Jing learned Jin Mao's operation and connected the virtual port on the desktop to the optical brain. For a moment, he felt that he was on a somewhat barren planet, and the violent sandstorm was blowing towards him, and Bai Jing immediately raised his sleeves to cover it. The wind and sand of the Carl star is very large. So many rough jadeite stones are buried under the surface. After thousands of years of movement, a unique rough yellow sand cortex is formed. With the teacher's explanation, Bai Jing felt the changes of the Earth's crust, the ups and downs of mountains and rivers, and the trajectories of the wool movement were clearly seen. After exiting the virtual space, looking at the training room in front of him, Bai Jing's heart was full of shock. This immersive reality made him stunned, and at the same time, he was deeply impressed by the characteristics of Carl's star. Gao Ling displayed Carl's star's wool image in a three-dimensional form right in front of the classroom, and began to explain the origin of wool, the crystal structure of the skin, the surface thickness, and the color classification. Bai Jing was very fascinated by it. Whenever Gao Ling explained a knowledge point, he quickly recorded the key words in his notebook, and at the same time replayed it in his mind at double speed. Jin Mao was recording on the optical brain electronic screen. When he saw Bai Jing took out an ancient Earth notebook, his eyes were full of shock. Laughing to death, what did that commoner take? Where did the old antique come from? The young men and women in the back even laughed out loud when they saw it, causing Gao Ling to knock on the desk heavily. Quiet! Bai Jing was calm and composed, and the pen in his hand did not stop at all. Compared with the electronic screen, he prefers the feeling of the pen falling on the paper, which will make his memory clearer. The reason why he can survive in the crisis-ridden apocalypse is his excellent learning ability and extraordinary adaptability. Otherwise, he would have been buried in the mouth of zombies long ago. Right now, he has too little understanding of interstellar and field knowledge, and the foundation is too weak. But as long as he finds the right method and trains hard, he believes that he will not lose to anyone. Bai Jing thought while taking notes. It wasn't enough to memorize keywords in class. He had to go back and review it several times to try to retell it completely. Gao Ling talked all morning and only talked about the performance of 2 or 3 wool materials. But he was very meticulous and worthy of being a professional teacher of the Stone Gambling Association. After his explanation, Bai Jing can barely identify the field where several different sandskin shell wool materials belong. And he can also say a thing or two about the performance of skin shells. It can be said that in the entire classroom, he is the one who has gained the most. Jin Mao saw that Bai Jing was still writing hard after class, and the notebook was full of dense handwriting, and was surprised by the other party's efforts. His family background is decent. His father is one of the 4 major robot manufacturers of Proxima Centauri, and he is well known in the middle and upper circles. It's just that with the current saturation of home robots, the family's business is going from bad to worse, and even his pocket money has been reduced a lot. Because of this, he wanted to become a stone gambler and wanted to open up another path for the family. Jin Mao thought that he had worked hard enough among his peers. Not only did he save his pocket money to buy wool, but he also often went to the wool area to watch other people gambling stones. But now, he looked at the text recorded on his light screen that was less than a page, and then looked at the notebook that Bai Jing remembered, and suddenly felt very ashamed. Bai Jing, I want to learn from you. The little fat man stared at each other with a fixed gaze, clenching his fleshy fists. In the afternoon, he also had to write down what the teacher said word by word. Bai Jing sorted out all the knowledge points in the morning, and half an hour has passed. It was noon, and everyone took out the nutrient solution to take it. Ning Yuxuan took out a high-grade nutrient solution from the space button, and the surface was glowing with fine streams of light, like a work of art. This nutrient solution is a customized flavor that has not yet been listed. It is only sold to aristocratic families and costs 2,000 stars for each. Seeing the envious eyes of others, Ning Yuxuan's lips curled into a smile, and she deliberately slowed down and drank gracefully. This is her favorite creamy strawberry flavor. The smooth and delicate taste has a sweet and sour fragrance, which is really a pleasure. Ning Yuxuan was enjoying the taste of high-grade nutrient solution and suddenly smelled a very strong aroma in her nose. It was the smell of curry beef. She would not be mistaken. She had eaten with her father at the Empire Rose restaurant several times before, and the taste was so delicious that her tongue was bitten off, and it is unforgettable to this day. But how can there be such a fragrant smell here? Jin Mao stared at the lunchbox that Bai Jing took out. The white rice grains were covered with potatoes and beef, and the rich soup had penetrated into the rice, exuding the unique aroma of curry. Looking at the tasteless nutrient solution in his hand, he was so greedy that his saliva was about to flow down. In the end, he couldn't bear the tempting smell and asked cheekily, "Bai Jing, did you do this?" Well, Bai Jing's movements were elegant but fast, and half of it was wiped out in a blink of an eye. "You actually know how to cook ancient Earth food?" The little fat man's eyes widened when he heard this. He had studied interstellar history. At that time, when the apocalypse broke out, there were only 1 million people left when human beings immigrated in a hurry. Jing, brother Jing, could you give me a portion of your lunch? Just a little bit. I'll just have a taste. Jin Mao looked at Bai Jing with pitiful eyes, causing the people who saw him a chill. Bai Jing frowned slightly. People who have experienced the end of the world will not easily share food with others. But thinking that Jin Mao told him about the assessment, he took out another box and gave him half a bowl. Woo, so delicious. The little fat man gulps down his face and burst into tears. He has never eaten such a delicious food since he was a child, and even high-grade nutrient solution is incomparable. The men and women around Ning Yuxuan took a deep breath and suddenly felt that the nutrient solution in their hands was tasteless, but their pride did not allow them to talk to a commoner, so they could only endure it silently. Several of them whispered, "Hey, did you just hear that the curry beef was made by the commoner himself? What if he did it? Are you going to ask him for it? Cough, I want to book tomorrow's lunch. Do you think 2,000 stars is enough?" You're crazy. Miss Ning hates lowly commoners the most, not to mention being from a slum. Do you want to anger her? Everyone was silent, gritted their teeth, and drank their own nutrient solution in the rich aroma, hoping that they would be able to resist the temptation of delicious food after being full. Ning Yuxuan tried her best to control her breathing so that she looked as usual without being affected in the slightest. In her heart, she thought to herself, I must ask her brother to take her to the Empire Rose restaurant for dinner at night, and she must order that curry beef. After Jean Mao finished eating, the automatic identification odor cleaning device was turned on immediately, and the indoor air was cleaned in 10 seconds, replacing it with a fresh smell like grass and trees. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and finally no longer had to be poisoned by this fragrance. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Gao Ling came to the classroom on time and started the afternoon class. He first briefly repeated the content of the morning, and then continued to introduce the impact of other planets on the surface of wool. Time passed quickly, and by the end of the course, he had already finished talking about the performance of wool at the entrances of several nearby stars, and began to ask random questions. Ning Yuxuan held her head high. Since she was a child, she often followed her father to look at various wool materials in the wool material area, and she knew this knowledge very well. And her goal this time is very clear, that is to get the top 10 in the assessment and become an official stone gambler as soon as possible. Gao Ling glanced at her and asked her to answer the first question. What is the performance of the wool at the entrance of Carl Star number 1? Ning Yuxuan talked eloquently. Carl Star has a lot of sandstorms and intense crustal movement. The number 1 field entrance is an old pit species, so it has formed a unique yellow sand skin with gray spots, and the skin is thicker. The answer is perfect. Gao Ling's serious face softened a little, and he answered questions to a few people. These questions are relatively basic, and everyone's answers are also correct. He turned his eyes to the white scene sitting in the first row, and there was a touch of appreciation in his eyes. He was very fond of this simple-dressed young man, and the attitude of the other party in listening to the class was extremely serious. Any teacher would like such a student. So Gao Ling slightly increased the difficulty and asked a question that was not covered in the class but was still basic. As we all know, Carl and Demo are companion stars to each other, and the environments of the two planets are roughly the same. How will the wool of these two planets be separated? Bai Jing quickly recalled every knowledge point that Gao Ling had mentioned in the class, but after searching his mind, he still could not find any relevant knowledge. So I said the truth, "Teacher, I'm really sorry, I can't answer." As soon as the voice fell, there was a burst of laughter from behind. Although the Stone Gambling Apprenticeship Assessment is difficult, the first day of the course is the most basic, most of which are common sense content, and then it will be deepened layer by layer. This commoner can't even answer such a simple question. Does it mean that he has to be the last one in the test? Oh, sure enough, everything that comes out of the slums is trash. Everyone looked at Bai Jing with contempt, and Ning Yuxuan frowned in disgust, as if staying in the same space with the other party was an insult to her. Gao Ling's eyebrows were also a little disappointed. He was also a commoner and knew the difficulties of commoners. The cost of stone gamblers is high, and the proportion of civilians is very small. To become a famous stone gambler, you must put in more than the usual number of efforts and get the support of the family with excellent performance. And the ranking of the Stone Gambling Apprentice Assessment is a good opportunity to show himself. Seeing this young man's meticulous attitude, he thought that there would be another stone gambler among the commoners, but he didn't expect that he couldn't answer even the most basic knowledge. That's it for today's class. Gao Ling didn't have the time to continue asking questions and immediately announced the get out of class. Chapter 13. Bai Jing, don't be discouraged. Jean Mao scratched his short hair and didn't know how to comfort the other party. The content of today's lecture was really basic, and even he could remember it. Could it be that Bai Jing really came from a slum and had no higher education? In Interstellar, almost everyone has the right to education, except the slums. The genetic level of the residents of the slums are all D level or below. They have little potential and poor physical fitness. In the interstellar era, when most of their labor is replaced by machines, it is difficult to find a way out. They can only rely on the monthly subsidies issued by the Empire to survive. Some officials in the upper echelons of the Empire tried to improve the situation, but they were rejected by other executives, on the grounds that these people had no value to the Empire, and it was merciful to be able to pay monthly subsidies. The slums have always been like a forgotten corner, ignored by everyone, left to fend for themselves where no one is looking. But the fact is, as these high-level officials said, for so many years, there has never been a person who can bring great value to the Empire in the slums. Jin Mao looked at Bai Jing. The others might not have observed each other carefully because of their cheap clothes, but he was sitting next to him, so he could naturally notice. Bai Jing's figure is a little thin but well-proportioned, with a thin waist, long and straight legs under black trousers, and a small section of ankles slightly exposed under the trousers. His complexion is as fair as a fine jade, and he can even see the blue inside of blood vessels. The forearm exposed in the t-shirt is very white, covered with thin muscles, and the lines are smooth and graceful. It does not look like a person with a D-level gene at all. If you just look at the figure, Jin Mao can almost conclude that the other party is the best handsome guy, and the proportion of the body is almost perfect. It's a pity that Bai Jing wears a pair of thick and earthy black-rimmed glasses, covering most of his face, making it difficult to see his appearance. Jin Mao thought to himself, maybe his appearance is relatively ordinary, or even, otherwise, who would use this kind of thing to cover his face? However, he didn't ask more questions and didn't dare to read more, and he still had this courtesy. I'm not discouraged. When Jin Mao's thoughts were racing, Bai Jing replied calmly, without the slightest expression of frustration on his face. It is a fact that there is no answer to the question, there is nothing to dispute. He put away the notebook, ready to go home and memorize it again, trying to keep up with the progress as soon as possible. Then we'll see you tomorrow. The little fat man waved to the figure who left Bai Jing. There are all kinds of suspended cars parked in the Sky Plaza of the Stone Gambling Association. The streamlined body and gorgeous appearance are more beautiful than supercars on the earth. The noble men and women got into their cars one after another and galloped away. Bai Jing was about to walk to the suspended train platform a few hundred meters away when an extremely cool suspended car suddenly stopped right in front of him. The pure black body exudes the unique cold color of metal, which is noble and restrained, attracting people who have not left to stop and watch. The automatic door slowly opened from above, revealing Chao and Jungxiu's profile. Let's go, Master Gu, let me take you there. Okay. Bai Jing propped his left arm on the edge of the car body and stepped into the car lightly, without the entire car body shaking at all. The black levitating car started, rose from the ground at an extreme speed, and shot straight into the sky, leaving only a black streamer. 2 minutes later, the cool vehicle stopped at the side door of Gu's stone gambling shop. Bai Jing took a few deep breaths, restrained the slight dizziness caused by the high speed, and followed Joan to the familiar box. Chowan performed iris and genetic identification, then knocked twice at the door, and said in a low voice, "Young Master Gu, it's me, Chowan." The door opened from the inside. Bai Jing entered the box and saw a tall man in a black military uniform standing by the wall with his back to him. The man is tall and tall, roughly estimated to be 1.9 meters tall. The tall and straight black military uniform outlines his perfect figure, with wide shoulders and narrow waist. The tight muscle outline and smooth lines can be clearly seen, which is full of strength. Under the tight black belt are a pair of long legs against the sky, and the hem of the military trousers is tucked into the leather military boots with a bright black color, which has a sense of abstinence. Even from the perspective of Bai Jingtong, Gu Yuanchao is very charismatic. What's more, his perception told him that every muscle on this man's body was full of explosive power, and he was the most perfect body. Seeing the two of them, Gu Yuanchao turned around and sat on the leather seat, his hands resting on both sides of the armrests. His long legs overlapped, his deep eyes swept over Bai Jing, and he asked, "Genetic decay has been completed. Cured?" Bai Jing nodded, "Yes, thank you for the gene fluid you provided." Gu Yuanchao laughed. "Is it necessary to be so polite with me? We are partners now, you can trust me more." Bai Jing lowered his eyes. He used to be carefree, cheerful, and straightforward. It's just that after the end of the world, The sense of crisis and the betrayal of his teammates who are always on the verge of life and death make it difficult for him to trust others as before. He's been trying to change recently, but he can't do it yet. Gu Yuanchao didn't force it. How does it feel to participate in the training on the first day? By Jing, very good. But my foundation is very weak and I need to learn from scratch. Gu Yuanchao pondered for a moment and looked at Xiaoan, who was standing upright beside him. You asked the Minister of Information to sort out the gambling stone materials that record all the planets and bring them as soon as possible. Yes. Joan bowed her head and replied. Just when he turned to leave, his eyes couldn't hide his surprise. I didn't expect that young Master Gu would care about such a trivial matter. He was really unusual for this young man. Soon, Joan handed a small black box to Bai Jing. Inside is a transparent chip the size of a thumb, which stores the most comprehensive stone gambling information in the entire empire. When he got home, Bai Jing took a hot shower as fast as he could and reviewed the knowledge points on the notebook with the nutrient solution in his mouth. He has an excellent memory since he was a child and can basically repeat it completely after reading it a few times. He even won the first place in the whole grade in the middle school entrance examination and entered the provincial Key High School with excellent results. Too bad it all ended in his sophomore year. Bai Jing quickly regained his senses. It is useless to think too much now. The most important thing is to pass the assessment. He focused on flipping through the notes, replaying the knowledge points in his mind. Then close your eyes and imagine how you would tell the students here if you were a teacher. To repeat it like this, the forgotten knowledge points in the middle are his weakest part, and he only needs to consolidate this part. It took 2 hours for Bai Jing to memorize all the content of today's class. He put away the notebook, inserted the transparent chip Gu Yuanchao gave him into the groove that popped up from the optical brain, and began to watch it carefully on the optical screen. The information in the chip is very comprehensive, covering almost all planetary information under the current empire's colonization. Among these planets, there are more than 30 jadeite rough stones. The history, characteristics of the planets, the location of the field, the characteristics of the field and the wool produced, etc., are completely marked and clear at a glance. Among them, there are even precious virtual images to assist understanding, which is simply the most detailed information, which can be called the encyclopedia of the interstellar stone gambling world. What he didn't know was that when Liang Hong, the Minister of Information, received Xiaoan's instructions, dense cold sweat immediately oozes out of his forehead. That was the information that Gu Xiao, the heir of the entire Gu family, wanted, and he did not dare to neglect it in the slightest. Liang Hong immediately ordered his subordinates to put down the work at hand. Countless quantum computers were running quickly, and a document was compiled as quickly as possible. He personally checked it and sent it to Xiaoan, and finally it came to Bai Jing's hands. Bai Jing looked at these materials with great concentration, absorbing the knowledge inside like a sponge absorbing water, and unknowingly it was late at night. For several days, Bai Jing only slept for 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time was spent on researching the content of the chip except reviewing the content in the class. He only read less than 1/10 of the information on the chip, but he has a detailed understanding of the origin, development, and unique characteristics of the nearby planets, which has laid a good foundation for future courses. Even though he only had 3 hours of rest every day, Bai Jing was still in high spirits and showed no signs of fatigue. Using fragmented time to rest against the clock is a compulsory course in the last days. His sleep quality has always been very good. 3 hours of sleep is equivalent to 8 hours of others, and he does not feel sleepy. At this point, the class had been going on for a week. Gao Ling strode up to the podium and inserted the memory chip into the holographic device. 5-dimensional projections of wool material appeared in the center of the classroom. The knowledge related to the entrance of the wool farm has been completed yesterday. I believe that all the students have a systematic understanding of the entrance. Gao Ling's tone has always been serious. The theory of gambling stones is only the foundation, and the most important thing is practice. Let's take a closer look at this piece of wool material numbered 1. Give you 5 minutes to judge which field of the planet number 1 wool belongs to, and tell the characteristics of this field of wool. The projected wool is not ordinary wool, but a symbolic wool that can only represent the characteristics of the field after removing other influencing factors such as python belts and pine flowers on the surface. This kind of practice can allow them to more accurately identify the characteristics of the wool in the field. After judging the basic field and adding the obvious characteristics such as loose flowers, python belts, and fissures, the probability of betting will increase a lot. Nonetheless, the questions asked this time are significantly more difficult than in the past. Even the noble men and women in the back restrained their relaxed attitude and began to think hard. With the gradual deepening of the course, countless knowledge points come one after another, like a sea of smoke. Now what they have to do is to connect the majestic knowledge points into a tight line. Unfortunately, not every student can sort out and integrate these knowledge points one by one. The 5-minute time is up, and everyone is still thinking hard and has no clue. It's so hard. If the previous question is equivalent to the difficulty of the short answer question, then this time it is the difficulty of the paper, not a level at all. When the time was up, under Gao Ling's stern gaze, everyone in the classroom, except Bai Jing and Ning Yuxuan, lowered their heads stubbornly with a look of never calling me. When Bai Jing was reviewing yesterday, he consciously made a mind map of the characteristics of these fields and combed it twice in his mind from beginning to end, so he did not find it difficult. On the other hand, Ning Yuxuan only had the foundation of the previous 10 years as a guarantee to be so confident. Gao Ling saw that only Bai Jing and Ning Yuxuan were still raising their heads in the classroom. The latter's perfect answer on the first day left a deep impression on him. As for Bai Jing, he shook his head inwardly. He didn't know such a simple question before. How could it be a more difficult question? Ning Yuxuan, can you answer the question of which planet number 1 wool material belongs to, and what are the characteristics of the wool material produced? Yes. The girl's sweet voice carried a bit of arrogance. Number 1 wool material is a black USA leather shell. The surface is slightly reddish. This is the performance of the number 2 field of Pulti planet. The characteristics of this field wool material are that the skin is black like lacquer, the surface is slightly reddish, and the shell is thick, and there are often ringworms on the skin. Very good. A smile appeared on Gao Ling's face. This answer was almost exactly the same as the standard answer, but the basic skills were solid. After Ning Yuxuan answered, she glanced at Bai Jing with mockery in her eyes. She didn't think that this slum-born person could answer such a difficult question, but it was just a swollen face and a fat man. Next was the second piece of wool. Gao Ling continued to ask questions. This time, only Bai Jing and Ning Yuxuan raised their heads. He frowned slightly. It's not good for the same person to answer the question every time. He looked at Bai Jing, which happened to meet the confident and clear eyes of the other party behind the lens. Gao Ling's heart moved. Bai Jing, you answer this question. Yes. Number 2 wool material comes from the first mouth of Paros. The boy's cold voice resounded in everyone's ears like a flowing spring. Paros rivers are all over the place. The mouth of the field is formed by the accumulation of sedimentary sediments over time. At the same time, the ground is full of magma. Therefore, the wool material is characterized by a red sandy skin. The skin is as thin as paper, and it is easy to produce bean seeds and waxy jadeite. Completely correct. Gao Ling's eyebrows were a little surprised. In addition to answering the field and the characteristics of the field, Bai Jing explained the reasons for the formation and truly achieved the integration of knowledge points. Not only him, everyone in the training room looked at Bai Jing in shock. A week ago, this teenager didn't even know the most basic knowledge, but now he has answered a question that even they don't know? How is this possible? But the facts were clearly in front of them, and they couldn't help but believe it. The faces of these noble men and women were flushed, as if they had been slapped several times in succession. They never thought that they would one day be defeated by a slum-born teenager. What a shame. Fatty Jean Mao's eyes were full of excitement, happier than answering the question himself. Damn, Bai Jing is so handsome. From now on Bai Jing is his idol. And Ngu, who was sitting at the back, clenched his hands tightly, and the young man in front brought him infinite power, which made him tremble with excitement. What about people from slums? They are not inferior to anyone. Chapter 14. The next 3 questions raised by Gao Ling were not unexpectedly answered by Bai Jing and Ning Yuxuan. Ning Yuxuan answered one more question by taking advantage of the order, with a proud expression as if she had won the battle. Humph. She just said that she will never lose to someone from a slum. Ning Yuxuan raised her head high, her slender neck straight, and defiantly looked at Bai Jing, who was sitting in front of her. With Bai Jing's keen perception, he naturally noticed the real gaze behind him, but he didn't care. He answered questions just to test and consolidate what he had learned. At present, the schoolwork is heavy, and he has no time to care about a little girl of 14 or 5 years old. Without getting even a single look, Ning Yuxuan's reddish eyes stared at Bai Jing's back, as if she had punched cotton. This person, this person dared to ignore her. When was the girl who had been spoiled since childhood been ignored like this? Her face flushed red for a while, and tears welled up with anger. She could only bite her lips, stubbornly not letting the tears fall. Woohoo, she remembered. This assessment is waiting to be seen. The people behind them also became numb from the shock at the beginning. Answering a question can be said to be a fluke, and answering it correctly twice in a row. Everyone's eyes on Bai Jing changed. They lowered their heads to cover their swollen faces and had to admit the fact that they were inferior to others. The growth rate of this young man is simply too terrifying. Gao Ling glanced at Bai Jing, who was sitting in the first row, with relief. A slight smile appeared on his serious face, and at the same time he sighed in his heart. He had misunderstood before. The young man was a piece of uncut jade, and now it has bloomed with dazzling brilliance after polishing, and it will become a great thing in time. Gao Ling retracted his gaze, turned on the virtual image, and systematically reviewed the knowledge points he had learned last week before continuing with today's lesson. This week we are going to learn about the judgment of wool pine flowers. Pine blossoms refer to the faintly visible patches and bands of dried moss on the skin of wool. According to the depth, shape, direction, number, and density of the color of the pine flower, the depth, direction, size, and shape of the green in the pine flower can be inferred. Generally, there are band-shaped pine flowers, point-shaped pine flowers, filament-shaped pine flowers, and strip-shaped pine flowers. He projected the wool with the shape of these pine flowers in a holographic mode in turn, and explained it bit by bit against the real object. As usual, Bai Jing took out a thick notebook from his backpack and turned to the blank space to prepare detailed records. In just 1 week, he had already written down a book full of notes, and at this time he took out a brand new note. Jin Mao also learned from Bai Jing and bought a large notebook. At this time, he took it out with a grin and followed the other side to record. Since Bai Jing answered 2 difficult questions in a row, he has become the focus of everyone's eyes. Eyes from all directions have been lingering on him, wondering why the other party has made such rapid progress. Seeing Bai Jing take out the old notebook at this time, these young men and women did not laugh as usual, but pondered. Cough. No, it can't go on like this. How can these rich children be suppressed by people from commoner backgrounds? It's too embarrassing. On the same day, the only shop on Star Online that sells ancient Earth stationery suddenly received a batch of orders, 200 notebooks and 1,000 gel pens. It's really weird. The owner muttered a few words in doubt, but he was relieved. At least the store could continue to open. The shop he opened is called For Treasures of the Study, which was handed down from his ancestors and specialized in selling stationery from the ancient Earth. But with the popularity of optical brains, except for the occasional few people who are curious or like to collect ancient Earth supplies, who will buy paper objects now? Seeing that the business has become more and more bleak in the past few months, the owner sighed and planned to give up the family inheritance, but he did not expect a timely rain when it was about to close down. The sales of ancient Earth stationery are not high and cannot be mass-produced, so the price of each item in the store is not low. Each notebook is priced at 800 to 1,200 star coins, and each gel pen is priced at 200 stars currency. This batch of orders brought him an income of 400,000 stars and a net profit of nearly 200,000, enough to last for 2 more years. The shop owner, who is barely making a living, will never imagine that one day in a few years, his shop will become popular on Quanxing.com overnight, attracting countless people. Not to mention a profit of 200,000 yuan. A profit of 20 million yuan is not a problem, just because it is the only God-level stone gambler in the entire Interstellar, a used notebook. The next day, Bai Jing still came to the training room early and found a thin boy with dark skin sitting not far from his seat. Seeing Bai Jing approaching, the boy stood up awkwardly, lowered his head and stammered, "Hello. My name is Ngu. Can I sit next to you and listen to the lecture?" "Yes, it's your right." There is a seat between the boy and him, and he will not disturb himself. Bai Jing put the backpack away, turned on the light brain and notes, and continued to learn the contents of the chip. "Thank you." After Ngu sat down, he gently pressed his hand on his chest, feeling his heart beating wildly. He finally mustered up the courage to come to the idol he worshipped, but fortunately the other party did not refuse. Not long after, the little fat man Jin Mao, who had always been stuck, also walked into the training room. He greeted Ngu very familiarly and sat down on the other side of Bai Jing, like two bodyguards, sandwiching Bai Jing from left to right. When the class was about to start, everyone took out the notebooks they had just bought yesterday, and they were lined up on the table. Damn it! Why did you buy it? If I want to buy it, I can buy it. What's the matter? The store is not opened by your family. Huh, luckily the cover is different. They deliberately lowered their voices, not wanting to let Bai Jing know, so as not to lose face. But how could Bai Jing not hear their communication with his keen perception? The corners of her pale lips twitched involuntarily. As soon as Gao Ling entered the classroom, he felt a different atmosphere than before. He found that these noble disciples had restrained their cynical expressions in the past. Seeing the transformation of the students, Gao Ling was particularly impressed with his lectures today. The whole morning's lectures were very smooth and completed in one go, and his serious face unconsciously revealed a bit of a smile. These noble men and women usually use the optical brain to record automatically, rarely write in person, and they are in a hurry for a while. But after getting familiar with it, they found that handwriting can really remember knowledge points more clearly, and it is easy to convert into their own language when recording, thereby deepening memory. Studies have shown that handwriting can help activate larger areas of the brain, including those responsible for language, thinking, and memory. Not only that, but in order to record the knowledge points completely, the teenagers straightened their backs one by one and kept their eyes straight. They were a little more serious and hardworking than before, thus forming positive feedback and achieving the effect of getting twice the result with half the effort. At the end of the day, these rich kids shook their numb hands, looked at the dense fonts on the notebook, and couldn't help being stunned. God, did you really write this yourself? An unprecedented sense of fulfillment and satisfaction overflowed from their chests and surrounded them, and this feeling even made some of them fall in love with learning ever since. What's wrong with studying? Learning is also a pleasure, and learning is also addictive. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, most of the course has been completed. With the gradual deepening of the course, everyone felt exhausted and had to increase their study time. Fatty Jean Mao even yawned several times in class, attracting Gao Ling's stern gaze. Well, Jean Mao quickly covered his half-yawned mouth, raised his hand to wipe away the tears from the corners of his eyes, and tried to concentrate. I really can't blame him. The content of yesterday's study was too complicated. He looked at his notes and saw it in the middle of the night. He only slept for 4 or 5 hours, and his natural state was not good. Not only him, many people in the class were listless. Even Ning Yuxuan's face was a little sleepy. Some students stared straight at the woolen image, but their thoughts had long since drifted to where they had gone. Half of these people are not because they are not serious, but because they have not understood. The previous knowledge has fallen too much, and we can only take time to make up, but time is already tight, and the process of making up the previous knowledge is now left behind, gradually forming a vicious circle. Until this time, they didn't regret it. The early courses were not difficult at all, and they were all basic things. Why didn't they listen to the lectures at that time? On the other hand, Bai Jing's foundation is so poor, but now he has made rapid progress. I don't know how many times he is stronger than them. At this time, in the entire training room, only Bai Jing was still in high spirits. His eyes were clear, and he was not affected by the people around him at all. The black nib swipes quickly on the white paper, leaving a line of beautiful lines, and the font is neat and generous, which is pleasing to the eye. The fingers holding the pen were slender and fair, with a touch of pink on the fingertips, which was a bit prettier than the font. Jean Mao turned his head to see Bai Jing's ease. His eyes were full of longing and envy. His idol must be a genius. But what he didn't know was that during this period of time, Bai Jing spent all the rest of his time studying, apart from ensuring 3 hours of sleep a day, with an unparalleled level of hard work. Bai Jing knows that his foundation is weak, so he never gets distracted in the class and always maintains a state of high concentration. His brain works frantically, desperately absorbing the content of the lecture and trying to grasp all the knowledge points on the spot. In this way, you only need to review and consolidate it again after you go back, and you don't have to spend too much time. With his super learning ability and memory, he had already read 2/5 of the content of the chip during this period of time. It is no exaggeration to say that his current mastery of basic knowledge is as good as anyone else's. Gao Ling looked at the sleepy crowd in the audience. knowing that they couldn't absorb it any longer. So he simply took a day off and let them go back and have a good rest. After the students cheered and left, a video message suddenly popped up on Gowling's brain. He looked solemn when he saw it and immediately connected President Joie. The pop-up screen showed the image of a middle-aged man. The man was probably in his 30s, with a straight appearance, dressed in the same clothes as Gao Ling, and the word Lu was marked on the silver badge on his chest, indicating that he was a respected 6th-level stone gambler. At the same time, this person is also the president of the Proxima branch of the Stone Gambling Association. Chairman Zhua smiled and said, "Long time no see, Gao Ling. Did you bother you in class?" Gao Ling, "No, I just gave the students a holiday." President Zhua, "How about it? Are there any good students in this class?" Generally, halfway through the course, when the difficulty increases, there will be obvious differences in students' performance, which is why he asks this question. Gao Ling pondered for a moment. "President, this class of students really worked hard. It's hard to tell until the last moment. However, there are two people who performed very well. I believe they will pass the assessment." President Zhua was a little surprised. "Oh? Who are these two people who can make you admire them so much?" Gao Ling was a serious person and rarely said such affirmative words, so he must be very optimistic about the two of them. Gao Ling, one is Ning Yuxuan, the youngest daughter of the Ning family, and the other is a boy named Bai Jing. The youngest daughter of the Ning family? Well, it is not surprising that the Ning family is the second largest wool miner in Proxima Centauri. Chairman Zhua pondered. What is the identity of that young man named Bai Jing? It seems that I have never heard of an aristocratic family with the surname Bai. A smile appeared on Gao Ling's serious face. President, he is from a commoner. Chairman Zhua was a little surprised when he heard the words. Civilian background? That's really a good seedling. The commoners are no better than these noble children. The educational resources they receive can only be said to be average, and they can reach the level of being praised by the other party, which shows their talent and diligence. He looked at Gao Ling, and his tone was a little serious. We must train these two people well and strive to get a good ranking in the final assessment, but we can't lose face like last year. Just last year, the Proxima branch was the third largest branch of the Stone Gambling Association, and none of the top 10 in the final assessment came from Proxima, and very few people passed through the entire planet, making President Zhua faceless. If this is the case this time, I am afraid that even the title of the third largest branch will be handed over to others. How can President Zhua not be in a hurry? Chapter 15. Bai Jing took a good night's sleep during the holiday and made up for the lack of sleep before. When the sun was up, I got up and made a hearty lunch. Even Bai Jing felt that he had been drinking tasteless nutrient solution for 20 days in a row. A braised eggplant, a spicy chicken, and fragrant rice were quickly placed on the table. The braised eggplant is soft and glutinous, melts in your mouth, and is delicious. The spicy chicken is still steaming, exuding a very attractive spicy taste. The fried chicken is crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. The index finger is moving. After eating and drinking, Bai Jing continued to devote himself to his studies. As the assessment time got closer and closer, the atmosphere in the classroom became more and more solemn. Everyone was nervously flipping through the notes and materials, except for the rustling of reading books and the sound of recitations. The content of Gao Ling's lecture has all ended, and it is time to consolidate and answer questions. However, as the person in charge of leading the team to the headquarters this time, he also has other important tasks and cannot stay in the training room all the time. Before leaving, Gao Ling put the communication method of Guangnao on the light screen and asked him to come to him at any time if he had any questions. I have to admit that Gao Ling is an extremely responsible teacher who treats teaching seriously and meticulously, but he has no idea about the mentality of these 14 or 15-year-old young men and women. In the eyes of these students, there is a deep gully between the teacher's eyebrows, and his expression is frighteningly serious on weekdays. Who dares to take the initiative to find him? Brother Jing, how do you identify the entrance of this wool? I don't understand. Fatty Jian Mao's eyebrows were both wrinkled together, his tone pitiful. Alas, he didn't want to disturb the other person's review either, but he was so depressed that his hair was going bald, and he didn't think of the answer to this question. Look carefully, there are a few whitish water marks on the wool, which are traces of the rough stones moving along the riverbed. And the traces are radial, indicating that the movement is divergent. So this is the wool at the entrance of Solon Star number 1. God, this Can you see it? Jean Mao looked around the wool and finally saw 3 inconspicuous white watermarks near the bottom, not much bigger than a grain of rice. The shape is even more difficult to distinguish, and it is almost integrated with the texture of the wool itself, even with a magnifying glass. Jean Mao was shocked. Bai Jing could see such hard-to-find traces just by taking a glance. What kind of eyesight must this be? That, Bai Jing, can you help me see this piece of wool? And Gu next to him also summoned the courage to ask. He must pass this exam. Otherwise, the Shun family will never support him again.
Can.
Bai Jing did not refuse. Explaining to others is also a way to consolidate knowledge, and it will sort out the ideas more clearly. Everyone sitting in the back row watched Jean Mao and Ngu surround Bai Jing, one after another, and their eyes were red with jealousy. Why do these two have such a good life? They also want Bai Jing's patient answer. Jean Mao, who was listening to Bai Jing's explanation, shivered suddenly, and when he looked back, he almost jumped up in fright. Damn, dozens of pairs of eyes are staring at him viciously. Those eyes, hiss, it's really terrifying. The little fat man turned back with lingering fears, but there was a secret sense of refreshment in his heart. Humph, who made you look down on my brother Jing when you first came? Regret it now? You deserve it. Proxima 3 Space Station. It is about 300 kilometers away from the ground of Proxima Centauri, completely separated from the surface of the planet. Bai Jing stood on the vast space station, looked around, and was shocked. It was like a small port city, docked with space ships heading to various planets, which was spectacular. Gowling and more than 500 students gathered here, ready to take the spaceship to the capital star. The capital star is about 2.5 light-years away from Proxima Centauri. It can be reached in one day using the most advanced wormhole space shuttle technology. Of course, the fee is not cheap, and each person needs to pay 10,000 star coins. Please board the Proxima Capital Star at docking point 15 as soon as possible. The silver-gray spaceship slowly docked at the docking point, and the white hatch opened. The students followed Gao Ling to log in one by one, and swiped the optical brain on the connection screen of the hatch. The screen will automatically recognize the identity certificate and deduct the corresponding fee. The little fat man Jean Mao walked behind Bai Jing. Thinking of his situation, he suddenly leaned forward and whispered, "Brother Jing, if you don't have enough star coins, passenger with ID 105-316-6247 paid successfully, please enter the cabin." Before he could finish speaking, Bai Jing's light brain was already on the connection screen. Jean Mao's eyes widened. He just seemed to see a flash of light on the brain screen showing that the balance was more than 700,000 star coins. He must be wrong. Isn't Bai Jing from the slums? How come there are more than his star coins? The pure white cabins in the spaceship were separated one by one, and the dormant compartment took up most of the space. Other than that, there were simple tables and chairs, and there were several primary nutrient solutions on the table. Through the small circular window, Bai Jing saw Proxima Centauri intertwined with azure and yellow getting farther and farther away from him. He knew that the space capsule had been activated, but he could not feel the impact of the slightest bumps and high speed inside. There is no difference on the ground. He looked forward, and a huge black spherical object appeared in front of him. The boundary was very thin, like a surging bubble. Bai Jing knew that it was a wormhole. Wormholes are space tunnels that connect two distant spacetimes, which are equivalent to folding two far-distant spaces and are shortcuts for spacetime conversion in the universe. Entering a wormhole is equivalent to entering a high-dimensional space, and the radiation will become extremely intense. Bai Jing pressed the remote control and entered the dormant compartment. It was as if he had slept for a long time, and when Bai Jing was woken up by the dormant chamber, he felt as if he had passed away. Everyone walked out of the cabin door one after another and saw the appearance of Capital Star on the galloping suspended train and couldn't help but be amazed. Look, that is the main city of the main Capital Star, Cloud City. My God, it's actually built in the air? Yes, it is said that the energy system of Yunzhong City comes from the number 1 jade mine, which produces a glass species of imperial green jade weighing 5 tons, known as the King of Jade, enough to maintain Yunzhong City for hundreds of years. Energy. Bai Jing looked forward through the car window and saw the huge main city built in midair, with various towering buildings rising from the ground, like huge islands floating on the sea. completely unaffected by gravity. Capital Star is worthy of being the first planet of the Empire, and its prosperity far exceeds that of Proxima Centauri. High-level mechas and supercar-type suspension vehicles that rotate and leap can be seen everywhere in the air, whizzing past in front of everyone's eyes, so fast that they can't see a trace. A well-equipped armed fleet is on standby at the docking point, and the cold and sharpness of the metal is blowing at the face, guarding the safety of the main city. After a strict inspection, everyone entered the main city, and it didn't take long to see the headquarters of the Stone Gambling Association. The headquarters of the Stone Gambling Association is located in the center of the main urban area. Two pyramid-shaped buildings are connected up and down. One is upright and the other is upside down. The tops of the triangles are firmly inlaid together, forming an angular 8 shape. Its appearance is smooth and flat like a mirror, so clear that it can illuminate human figures. The silver surface reflects the cold light. The Egyptian pyramids are known as the first of the 8 wonders of the earth. This building is a reconstruction of the wisdom of the ancient earth, but it is beyond the skills of the ancient earth. The golden pentagram flag flutters on the top of the tower, and the whole building is unique. Even people who don't know the Stone Gambling Guild can recognize it at a glance. The interior and exterior of the Stone Gambling Guild are completely different, with a consistent European style, which is very similar to the Proxima branch. Dozens of white pillars support the high semicircular dome. The colors of blue and silver are intertwined, and the long carpet extends all the way to the inside, embroidered with the golden pentagram logo, which is restrained and gorgeous. Bai Jing and the others stood at the door and looked up at this magnificent building with amazement. Gao Ling, the leader of the team, stepped forward to connect with the head of the headquarters, and at the same time informed the other party that the candidates from Proxima Centauri had arrived. The boss is a 5th-level stone gambler, and his attitude towards Gao Ling is not enthusiastic and even a bit contemptuous. Last year, Proxima Centauri's ranking in the assessment almost fell out of the top 10. If this is the case this year, the position of the 3rd largest branch will be handed over. After a while, Gao Ling's face became ugly, showing that he was not happy at the headquarters. Now that it was getting late, Gao Ling led the students to check in at the pre-booked Interstellar hotel. Even if you have already reserved a room, you must pay for the check-in as soon as possible, because the room will be extremely tight during the stone gambling assessment. The consumption of Capital Star is very high, and the cost of staying one night is 2,000 stars. Counting the 2-day exam time and the rest time tonight, each person has to pay 6,000 stars for accommodation. This amount of money is nothing to the children of rich families, but it is a lot of money for Ngu. The Shin family only subsidized his travel expenses to and from Proxima Centauri, and he had to bear the daily expenses himself. After seeing the price list of the hotel, Nge's face turned pale, and he stood there stiffly. He quickly turned on his brain, swiped from top to bottom, and looked at all the surrounding hotels, and found that the cheapest one cost 1,500 star coins, and it was at least 30 minutes away from here. Bai Jing, can I live in a room with you? I'll pay half of the room fee. Ngu bit his lower lip, desperate to ask Bai Jing for help. I don't know when he started to have an extraordinary trust in Bai Jing. Although the other party looked cold and his body was not so tall, he felt extraordinarily safe. I want to live in a room with you, and I'll pay for the room. Before Bai Jing could answer, Fatty Jean Mao interjected enthusiastically. He hadn't slept with his idol yet. Forget it. The hotel currently only has a big bedroom. With the size of the little fat man, there is no room for 3 people to share the room. Although he is not used to living in a room with others, but in this strange era, after a month of getting along day and night, these 2 people can be said to be his only friends. Friend? Bai Jing was stunned. The word had not appeared in his mind for a long time. Let's go. Bai Jing refreshed his mind and walked towards the room under the guidance of the guiding robot. He agreed. Ngu stood there for a moment, stunned, and immediately chased after him ecstatically. As soon as Bai Jing entered the door, he took a hot bath. When he came out, Ngu just packed his things and looked up, and the moment he saw the other party, he lost his voice. The young man has a slender figure and perfect proportions. His skin is dyed with a touch of pink under the steaming heat. His brown-black hair is fluffy and soft, scattered in a messy manner between his eyebrows. Further down are a pair of misty brown eyes, moist and translucent, as if containing a clear spring, so beautiful and fascinating. When those soul-sucking eyes looked over, and Gu couldn't help holding his breath. By Jing, you. His face suddenly turned red. His heart was beating violently. His throat was dry, and he was a little breathless. He never thought to cover up such a beautiful face under that pair of black frames. He can say firmly, if Bai Jing becomes a stone gambler in the future, this face alone will attract countless fans. What's wrong? Bai Jing asked suspiciously. His perception felt that the other party seemed to be excited, and the active response in the body surged, but he did nothing. In the apocalypse, people have always only focused on survival. The strong are respected, and they can do whatever they can to survive, and everything else is secondary. He didn't know the lethal power brought by beauty in this era. Never mind. Seeing Ngu hurrying into the bathroom with his head lowered, Bai Jing didn't ask any further questions. He took down one of the quilts and spread it on the carpet several meters away from the bed. You're going to sleep on the floor? Let me come. After Ngu came out, seeing that the other party didn't plan to sleep with him, he breathed a sigh of relief. But how could he let Bai Jing lay the floor? It was obvious that he had something to ask for. No, go to sleep. Bai Jing had no intention of arguing about such trivial matters. He turned off his optical brain. The voice-activated lights went out under his command, and the room immediately plunged into darkness. Ngu tossed and turned on the bed for a while before calming down his pounding heart. Bai Jing doesn't want others to see his appearance, must have his concerns. He will help the other party keep this secret and prevent Bai Jing from being coveted by others. Chapter 16. The next morning, tens of thousands of young men and women gathered in the hall on the first floor of the guild headquarters, all of whom came from various planets to participate in the Gambling Stone Apprentice exam. Fortunately, the guild headquarters covers a very large area and the hall is spacious. Otherwise, it would never be able to accommodate so many people. Looking at the crowded crowd and the beating numbers on the detector, Jean Mao's face turned pale. This time there were more than 1,000 candidates than last year. Regardless of the number of people, the Stone Gambling Association will only hire the top 100 players every year, which means that this year's competition will be more intense than in previous years. He unconsciously glanced at Bai Jing next to him, and the calm and indifferent appearance of the other party made him slowly calm down. It doesn't matter. This year he is much stronger than last year, and he has been instructed by Bai Jing, and he will definitely enter the top 100. Look, the contestants of Capital Star are here. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. I saw the group of Shirshiran, a group of 14 or 15-year-old noblemen and women, coming from the door. They were wearing silver uniforms with silver chains on their chests. The boys were handsome and the girls were beautiful. Everyone spontaneously gave way to let them walk ahead. Fortunately, there are not many people this time. Only 30 people. There are so few contestants in the entire Capital Star. Hey, don't you know? They were all recommended by the major families of the Capital Star, and they are absolute heaven's favorites, and the pass rate of the assessment is close to 100%. Not only that, the top 5 in the annual assessment will be taken by them, and there has been no exception in the past 10 years. This is too strong. Damn it, don't we only have 70 places? Among this group of people, the most conspicuous is the young man headed. The teenager has thick chestnut hair, blue eyes like the most dazzling sapphire, fair skin, slender body, like a prince who came out of an oil painting, with a mighty arrogance, is the focus of everyone's attention. See. The one standing at the forefront is the young master of the Du family, Du Xingyu. The Du family. Is it the Du family of the second largest wool miner in the empire? It's a behemoth second only to the Gu family. That's right. His sister, Du Jingya, is the youngest 5th-level stone gambler in the history of the empire. Influenced by his sister, Du Xingyu likes to gamble on stones since he was a child. He owns a whole planet of raw stones and has received professional teaching. He must be the first. Alas, this year's contestants are too strong. I hope God bless us to pass the test. Bai Jing walked to the tester with the flow of people. After passing the test, he entered the number 6 test room to which Proxima Centauri belongs. The space of the examination room is very wide, and each person has a corresponding partition, which is separated by an opaque light curtain, forming a space of 4 or 5 square meters. The assessment time is 2 days, divided into theory and practice, each of which takes up 1 day. The total score of the exam is 100 points, 40 points for theory and 60 points for practice. The first day of the test is theoretical knowledge, and the test time is 5 hours. By Jing connects the virtual port on the desktop to the optical brain, which shows that the authentication is successful. The interface of this assessment appeared on the light screen. After clicking on the answer, the light screen flashed instantly, and countless questions floated by in front of Bai Jing, and finally settled in an instant. This is equivalent to randomly selecting a set of test questions from thousands of question banks, and each candidate is different. Bai Jing swept it from top to bottom at a very fast speed, and found that these topics were very detailed, covering all aspects of knowledge, and the coverage was extremely wide. But this theoretical knowledge is not difficult for him. Today's Bai Jing has read all the content in the chip, and the foundation is very solid. Coupled with Gao Ling's professional explanation in the classroom, he is now familiar with the knowledge of gambling stones. He had only read these questions once, and immediately had the answer in his mind. The electronic pin in your hand is as light as nothing, with an excellent touch, and you can leave clear marks without any effort. The black nib writes quickly on the glossy screen with almost no pause. 2 hours later, Bai Jing stopped answering, the beautiful and neat handwriting displayed on the light screen. But in an instant, it turned into general electronic writing. The brown eyes behind the lens checked the answer from beginning to end, and after confirming that there were no omissions, he walked out of the examination room. Du Xingyu was the only one in the empty hall. He obviously just came out and was standing on the detector to be tested when he left. Seeing Bai Jing, Du Xingyu was obviously stunned for a moment, and his azure blue eyes flashed with surprise. His speed of answering questions has always been unmatched. According to his calculations, the second person to leave the examination room should be at least an hour later, and he should come from the number 1 examination room where the capital star is located. Who is this person? The speed of answering questions is even comparable to his, but looking at his clothes, he is obviously a civilian. Du Xingyu thought about it this way, and couldn't help but glance at Bai Jing again. His expression was indistinguishable. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he snorted disdainfully and turned away. It was he who thought wrong. This person is not talented, but he can't answer it. It was a waste of time for him to stand in the same place and guess for a long time. Cut. It's really boring. As expected by Du Xingyu. The next candidate to walk out of the examination room was a girl who came out of examination room number 1 3 hours after the examination. The girl's identity is also noble. She comes from the Tang family, the first mecha manufacturing family in the empire. Her grandfather is the strongest mecha maker in the empire. Bai Jing sat in the waiting area of the hall, first drank 2 nutrient solutions to replenish his strength, and then turned on his light brain to watch the virtual image of Wool, while waiting for Jin Mao and Ngu. The theoretical test this time is indeed difficult, but it has not reached the level of perverted that little fatty said. According to his speculation, tomorrow's practice assessment is the top priority, and it is the part that can really widen the distance between each candidate, so it is necessary to prepare early. Brother Jing, we're out half an hour before the end of the exam. Jin Mao and Ngu walked out of the exam room almost at the same time. With obvious excitement on their faces, it can be seen that they did well in the test. The little fat man excitedly wanted to pat Bai Jing on the shoulder, but the latter avoided him reflexively. Brother Jing, thanks to you helping us sort out the test center, I have answered all the questions except for 2 or 3 questions this time. Yeah, I'll definitely pass the test this time. He clenched his fists with both hands and couldn't help but let out a roar, which attracted strange eyes from everyone. Let's go. Bai Jing walked out of the hall first, and the two hurriedly followed. The second practice exam started at 9 a.m. and ended at 5 p.m. It lasted for a full 8 hours, which shows that it was an uphill battle. Bai Jing followed everyone into the examination room in turn. His seat was still number 138 in examination room number 6, and there was no change. The only difference is that there are 5 nutrient solutions provided by the headquarters on the table to ensure the physical strength of the candidates. Bai Jing connected the virtual port on the desktop to the optical brain, and at the moment when the two were connected, he felt that he had come to a virtual space with several woolen materials. Dozens of pieces of wool are placed on the stone platform in the space, with different appearances and sizes. At the same time, other candidates also entered the same virtual space at the same time. Just because of the space isolation technology, each candidate is equivalent to being in a different parallel space and does not interfere with each other. Immediately afterwards, a sweet female voice sounded in the empty room, very clear. Please note that the content of this practice test is: first, please classify the 55 wool materials in the examination room according to the planets and the entrances, and enter the corresponding numbers of the wools into the corresponding planets and entrances. Each wool material is worth 1 point for a correct answer, and this item totals 55 points. Second, please select a piece of wool that is most likely to produce jade among the 55 wool materials. If the bet goes up, this item will be counted as 5 points. The two assessments have a total of 60 points, and the examination time is 8 hours. Now the countdown begins. All the wool materials placed in this space are all unscreened wool materials that were taken back from various planets by the members of the Stone Gambling Guild. Except for a few wool skins with obvious characteristics of the field, most of them were taken randomly and are not representative. It is difficult to judge. I am afraid that apart from the Stone Gambler who got the wool back, no one knows where the wool came from. Bai Jing looked at the answering place on the light screen. There were more than 30 planets listed on it, with a total of more than 80 entrances. It's easier said than done to accurately judge each of these 55 pieces of wool and classify them in turn. Sure enough, it's a hell-level assessment. Bai Jing sighed in his heart. Time was running out. He began to look at the first piece of wool in turn. The first piece of wool is about the size of a football, with an angular surface, a yellow sand leather shell with grayish-white spots on the surface. When irradiated with strong light, the light transmission is not strong, indicating that the leather shell is thick, which is a typical performance of Dimoxing number 1 field. Bai Jing filled in the number 1 on the corresponding field and began to look at the next one. The first 4 or 5 had typical characteristics, but when it came to the 6th, he was a little uncertain. This is a piece of lime skin wool, about 30 centimeters long and 10 centimeters high. It is an irregular cuboid with different shades of surface. He used a strong light to illuminate along the epidermis, and the light transmittance was not strong, indicating that the skin was thicker. Other than that, however, the wool had no other features. Bai Jing's eyesight was excellent. He looked at this number 6 wool material 3 times over and over again, but he still didn't find anything. There are no pine flowers, python belts, ringworms, and dryness on its surface. It is plain and featureless. This wool material can correspond to the field of 7 or 8 planets. In desperation, Bai Jing could only put it aside for a while before continuing to watch the next piece. In addition to judging the planet and field where each wool material belongs, he also has to write down the wool material that performs well, and finally select the best performing piece in it as the answer to the second assessment. 2 hours later, Bai Jing looked at more than 30 pieces of wool material in a row, of which 3 were inaccurate, and the rest filled in the answer. Bai Jing frowned, not satisfied with the result. But what he didn't know was that other candidates had already been tortured mad by this year's perverted exam questions. Jian Mao sat on the ground without any image, holding a magnifying glass in his hand, and stuck his entire face to the wool material, but still could not observe any features, so he slammed the ground violently. Damn, it hurts so much. When his fist collided with the hard stone slab, it was like hitting a stone with an egg. He couldn't identify 1/3 of the wool, and he was about to cry. Who made such a perverted problem this year? It wasn't so difficult last year. After more than a month of hard work and experience in previous years, coupled with Bai Jing's guidance, Jian Mao's strength has risen steadily. Even so, he is very difficult, not to mention other candidates. There were shouts of swearing and cries on the verge of collapse from different rooms, and many people left the exam room after scribbling, preparing to fight again next year. Even Du Xingyu, the most favored person in exam room number 1, frowned, with 4 or 5 indistinguishable wool materials on hand. So it was not easy. At the same time, in the room on the top floor of the Stone Gambling Association, the president of the Stone Gambling Association looked at the exhausted look of the candidates on the big screen, narrowed his eyes slightly, stroked his beard, and smiled. Ha ha, it seems that my idea this year is very good. You can see that they are all in a hurry. They are indeed young people. They are full of energy. Hearing this, the corners of the mouths of several senior stone gamblers standing beside the president twitched. You have come up with a good idea. These candidates will be miserable. However, they also know that the number of applicants this year is too large. If the difficulty is not increased, it may be difficult to widen the gap. You don't need to look at the number 1 this time. It must be the boy of the Du family. With the guidance of his talented sister and the inheritance of Master Du, he will definitely reach the top. Well, not only that, the harder the problem, the easier it is to widen the gap. Du Xingyu will probably surpass the others by a large score. The stone gamblers looked at Du Xingyu's nearly 100% correct rate on the big screen and showed a tacit smile. This year's number one, there is no suspense. Hey, this kid is also very good. The wool he judged was filled in correctly. One is not bad. A 6th-level stone gambler suddenly said. Chapter 17. Where? Cut the camera to him. Several senior stone gamblers said anxiously. The staff next to him immediately operated the light screen, and the slender figure of the teenager was displayed on the super-large screen about 5 meters long. Wearing a very ordinary white shirt and black trousers, with a pair of thick black-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose, he looked inconspicuous and was concentrating on marking a few pieces of wool. Looking at the boy's answer sheet, all the stone gamblers were shocked. They were all correct, and their talent was no less than that of Du Xingyu. Who is this kid? His eyesight is extraordinary. Yes, to be able to distinguish all the fields, the basic skills must be extremely solid. Do you know him? What's his name, and which planet does he come from? Lu Yuanchao, a 6th-level gambling stone master, asked the crowd behind him. Such a good seedling is rare, but it must not be buried. Unfortunately, no one present could answer his question. They have never heard of this young man, and looking at his clothes, he should be of civilian origin. Master Lu, according to the examination room he is in, he is from Proxima Centauri. A staff member replied. Proxima Centauri? Well, yes, you can teach such a good seedling. It seems that the position of the 3rd largest branch has been preserved this time. The head of the Stone Gambling Association flashed light in his eyes, stroked his beard, and smiled. Hearing the president's words, the other stone gamblers looked at each other and made a judgment in their hearts. It seems that the Proxima branch is not as hopeless as they thought, and it is necessary to make more friends with them in the future. And the Vic Star branch president, who was ranked the 4th largest guild, secretly gritted his teeth and felt resentful in his heart. He thought it was a sure thing to rise in the rankings this year. He even wrote a celebration declaration and was just waiting for it to be released. But I never thought that the Proxima Star Guild would have a bad luck, and a talented young man with talent comparable to Du Xingyu saved them from the situation of falling ranking. Why is this boy not in their Vic Star? Damn. Hateful. Bai Jing, who was observing the wool, suddenly felt a sense of being watched. He looked around quietly and found no danger, so he calmed down and continued the exam. Perhaps he is too sensitive. This is the headquarters of the Capital Star Gambling Stone Guild. It is the safest place in the entire empire except the palace, and there will be absolutely no accidents. For full hours have passed since the assessment time. After Bai Jing drank 2 nutrient solutions to replenish his strength, he entered the virtual space again. All of the 55 pieces of wool have been carefully checked. Except for 6 pieces that still have no clue, the number of the remaining wool has been filled in on the answer sheet. Looking at the numbers of the 6 pieces of wool, Bai Jing frowned slightly, intending to save them for the end, but he really couldn't tell that he could only rely on luck. Now he is concentrating on finding the wool that can produce jadeite, which accounts for 5 points, and it is also the part that really tests the ability to gamble with stones, so he must get it. After the observation just now, he picked out 3 pieces of wool from the 55 pieces, 1 white salt sand skin, 1 black USA skin, and the last one is pineapple skin, numbered 12, 33, and 48 respectively. Among the 3 pieces of wool, the one with the best performance is the white salt sandskin wool. The wool of the white salt sandskin belongs to the rock, which is the best in the white sandskin. Due to the long-term weathering and erosion of rain and sun, the skin is generally white, and the sand feels obvious when touched by hand, just like salt sand. As the name suggests, it is called white salt sand. The wool of white salt sandskin is often fine in texture, well-planted, and water-headed. Most of them are glass, ice, and blue-flowered jadeite. Among them, white glass and ice are the most common, and emeralds can also appear. Green contour emerald variety. The wool material numbered 12 is 1 circle smaller than a rugby ball. It is a slightly flat oval shape, with a fine leather shell and 2 bands of green pine flowers on the surface, which are symmetrically distributed and perform extremely well. Although the other 2 pieces performed well, they were far inferior to the wool of this white salt sandskin. He probed his perception into the wool, and after entering it, he felt a strong, active reaction, enough to reach the ice. The size of the jade inside occupies 1/3 of the entire wool, and it is roughly estimated that it is at least 3 kilograms, which is not too small. Logically speaking, there is no suspense about this piece of wool. Whether it is the performance of the wool itself or the texture of jadeite, it is absolutely excellent. Bai Jingying should fill in the number 12 into the answer sheet without hesitation. But it was precisely because this piece of wool was performing so well that he had doubts in his heart. In his opinion, it is no exaggeration that today's practice assessment is called the hell mode. But this piece of white salt sand skin is equivalent to a cavalry, leaving all the wool far behind. As long as anyone who has a little knowledge of gambling stones will not miss it. This is almost equivalent to putting the answer in front of you clearly and waiting for others to take it. Are exam questions really that easy? Bai Jing's intuition was a little wrong. He didn't think these 5 points were so easy to get. There must be something he ignored. He glanced at the exam rules again. Please select the piece of wool that is most likely to yield jade among the 55 wool materials, and if the bet goes up, this item will be counted as 5 points. If the bet goes up, it counts as 5 points. The bet goes up? Between the light and flint, there seemed to be a flash of lightning flashing across his mind, and Bai Jing finally understood the trap in this question. At the same time, I also have to admire the cunning and ingenuity of the question maker. Yo, he was discovered by him. The president of the Stone Gambling Guild said with a smile. Naturally, other stone gamblers also discovered the sickness, and some of them couldn't help but scold the guild leader for being an old fox for actually playing this kind of word game. It is estimated that many candidates will be misled and fall into the prepared trap this time, especially when the questions are extremely difficult and time is so tight. The number of the white salt sand skin wool material is in such a high position, and the performance is so excellent, presumably many candidates will recognize it as soon as they see it, and will not choose other wool materials at all. Maybe these people are still complacent in their hearts, thinking that these 5 points will definitely be included in the bag, but they don't know that they are the poor prey in the hands of the hunters. What is a bet up? The so-called gambling rise means that the price of jadeite in the rough is higher than the price of buying the rough. For example, someone bought a piece of wool with the price of 10,000 star coins and found the worst dry white jadeite, but this jadeite was worth 12,000 star coins, which is also a bet. In the same way, if this person buys a piece of wool with the price of 5 million star coins, even if the solution is a high ice seed worth 4 million star coins, this is a gamble. The title only says that the bet goes up, and the price of the rough stone is not clearly informed, which is the tricky part of this question. White salt sandskin is the best in white sandskin. The output is small, and the base price of each piece of wool is not less than hundreds of thousands of stars. This piece of wool has performed so well, presumably because of the high purchase price. Even if 3 kilograms of ice seeds are released from it, it may not be able to bet on it. After thinking about this, Bai Jing turned his attention to the black Usha wool material numbered 33. This piece of wool is not big, its diameter is a circle larger than the mouth of the bowl, and the skin is black but not covered with wax shell. There is an inconspicuous gray-green python belt on its surface, a few clusters of black cyan pine flowers scattered around it, and ringworm at the bottom, and the overall performance is acceptable. Bai Jing penetrated deep into the wool material, and as soon as he entered the leather shell, he felt an active reaction. It was not very strong, but not weak either. After filling in the number of 33 into the answer sheet, he continued to use his perception to test the last piece of pineapple fur and wool, but he did not expect that there was no active reaction in it, and it was dead and completely different from what he expected. This discovery suppressed the complacency that he had just judged correctly twice in a row, and let him know that he still had a lot to learn, and he must not be arrogant. Looking at the 6 wool materials that were still unrecognizable, Bai Jing sighed and filled in the blanks at will. Whether these 6 points can be obtained can only be left to fate. He checked the answer sheet from beginning to end, and after making sure that all wool was missing, he left the virtual space. At the same time, Du Xingyu also filled in the wool material numbered 33 into the last column and walked out of the number 1 examination room. The two came out almost at the same time. Du Xingyu glanced at Bai Jing without any emotion. A trace of ridicule flashed across his blue eyes, and he sped up the pace of leaving. It was not until the end of the exam time at 5 o'clock in the afternoon that the little fat man Jin Mao and Ngu walked out of the exam room. Both of them were a little gloomy. "Oh, Brother Jing, I won't fail this time. I really don't want to take the exam for another year." Jean Mao grabbed a handful of hair and grinned in pain. Will not. He saw the efforts of Fatty and Ngu, and Bai Jing believed that both of them would pass the assessment this time. The Stone Gambling Apprenticeship assessment has ended, and the candidates have returned to their own planet by spaceships. The final score of the assessment will be announced on the official website of the Stone Gambling Association 3 days later and will be synchronized with the Star Network. At that time, all citizens of the Empire will be able to see the assessment ranking. Of course, this is the part that all the candidates pay the most attention to, but for the citizens of the Empire, the most anticipated is tomorrow's live broadcast of the solution. The Stone Gambling Association issued a notice in advance that the 55 pieces of wool as the exam questions will be unraveled one by one under the witness of everyone to ensure the fairness of the assessment. This is the first time in the history of the Stone Gambling Association that the assessment content about the Stone Gambling apprentices has been published on the Star Network. While everyone lamented the perversion of the topic, they were also looking forward to the upcoming calcification. By 8 o'clock in the morning, the number of people in the live broadcast room had reached 50 million, and it was still increasing. The barrage in the live broadcast room is swiping very fast, and almost every second is filled with thousands of words and various expressions, which is dazzling. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the face of the president of the Stone Gambling Guild appeared on the screen. At this time, the number of people in the live broadcast room has reached an astounding 70 million, which is several times higher than the top live broadcasters and stars, and the upward trend has not stopped at all. The people who squatted in the live broadcast room naturally included the candidates who participated in the assessment. They were nervous and stared at the screen without blinking, lest they miss any picture. Ning Yuxuan also stood in front of the screen early. In this assessment, she feels that she has performed well, and she hopes to enter the top 10. She is not worried at all about theoretical knowledge. The only thing she is worried about is a few woolen materials that are inaccurate. Today, she is here to confirm the results. Bai Jing is also a member of the live broadcast tourists, but his mood is very calm, and he came with the mentality of learning. The Stone Gambling Association will definitely explain in detail how to identify these wool materials. This is the most professional explanation, and it is worth listening to. Behind the president of the Stone Gambling Association is a space with woolen materials. Candidates who have participated in the assessment know that this is the virtual space for their practice assessment. He smiled and said, "Thank you for coming to the live broadcast room of the Stone Gambling Association. In order to ensure fairness and justice, this time, the form of live calcification will be used to ensure the authenticity of each piece of wool. Next, the 6th-level stone gambling master Lu Yuan will be the everyone explain. Lu Yuan is in his 30s, with a charming and handsome face, tall and tall. He has more than 30 million fans on Star Domain, and the live broadcast room was flooded with various gifts for a while. Even some local tyrant fans are rewarded with tens of thousands of star coins as soon as they make a shot, which is quite arrogant. The president looked at the continuous gifts in the live broadcast room. His squinted eyes lighted slightly, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became bigger. The fans are so enthusiastic. Presumably the star coins for buying wool this time will soon be earned back. Chapter 18. Lu Yuan walked to the first piece of wool, and the live studio switched the camera to the surface of the rough stone in time. This piece of wool is an ordinary yellow sand leather shell, which is not easy to identify, but if you look closely, there are several gray-white spots scattered on its surface, and most of the spots are distributed on one side, which is very uneven. Look at its leather shell. With his detailed explanation, Bai Jing has a deeper understanding of this piece of wool. He is worthy of being a senior stone gambler. There are many details that he has not noticed. However, the audience in the live broadcast room was not very interested in these boring explanations. Fortunately, at the same time as the explanation, there will be an experienced calcite master synchronizing the calculus. At this time, everyone was connected to the virtual port, and they were able to stand by and watch the calcification process in person. This excitement caused a surge in traffic, and the number of people in the live broadcast room successfully exceeded the 80 million mark. The first piece of wool was cut 3 times in different directions along the leather shell, and it was no surprise that it was a white stone, and everyone could not help sighing softly. The second piece of wool cut a knife along the ringworm at the bottom, and when the second knife fell, it turned green. However, when everyone was excited, the stone gambler cut 2 more knives and found that it was green on the skin, which attracted sorrow to countless people. the third piece of wool. In more than an hour, Master Xiesher untied a total of 11 pieces of wool. Only one of these wools had jadeite, but there were large cracks in the jade meat, which could not be used at all, and everyone's mood also fell. At this time, the calcite master moved the white salt sand skin wool material numbered 12 to the calcite machine. The hearts of the candidates were immediately suspended. More than half of them chose this piece of wool, and they all prayed that there would be no problems. This was related to whether they could pass the assessment. Ning Yuxuan first saw this piece of white salt sandskin wool during the exam, and without hesitation, filled in the number 12 into the answer in the last column. Now her mood is still very relaxed. Just based on the performance of this piece of wool, the jade inside will never be bad. A smile appeared on Lu Yuan's handsome face, and he gently rubbed the surface of the wool with his hands, introducing, "This piece of white salt sandskin has a rough surface and a strong sense of sand removal. It is a typical wool material from the first field of the sauté area, and it is the best in white sandskin. The surface of the skin is compact and delicate, indicating that the seed is old. Looking at its surface, a strip of green pine flowers is symmetrically distributed, which is a very good material. The probability of ice seeds is very high, and it is even possible to produce glass seeds." After Lu Yuan explained it in detail, Master Xiesher looked back and forth for a long time very cautiously, and then began to wipe the stone along the direction of Songhua, and soon wiped out the fog. The fog is coming out so soon. It's still white fog. In an instant, everyone's enthusiasm was ignited. The popularity of the live broadcast room soared to the extreme, and the number of people rose. The candidates sitting in front of the stage were equally excited. It was foggy, and judging from the water-sprinkled section, the jadeite inside was not bad. The bet has definitely risen, and it has risen sharply. Seeing the white fog, Master Xiesher's operation was more meticulous, and he wiped the stone little by little along the fog surface and quickly wiped out a window the size of a palm. Drenched in water, the incision is as clear as ice, with a faint cool feeling. It's ice. The calcite master carefully observed the outline of the incision and the direction of the pine flowers at the bottom, and cut a knife near 1/3 of the bottom. As expected of an experienced master, this knife is just right, just cut out the size of jade. As the saying goes, swipe up is not up, but cut up is up. After the knife was dropped, the outline of this jadeite was almost fully revealed, which was a final touch. In the end, the 3.4 kilograms of ice-floating jadeite was unraveled from the wool of this white salt sandskin. The crystal-clear jade is like a flowing ice spring, with a little green color in it, like clouds floating in it. The texture is delicate and the watercolor is full. The live broadcast room was immediately swiped by countless gifts, and people walked up to enjoy it excitedly. They felt the clear and cool touch of ice jade through holographic technology, and their hearts were full of love. This is the first time I have seen the birth of ice jadeite with my own eyes. It is hard to believe that it was solved in a stone. It is really beautiful. The ice-type floating jadeite that weighs 3.4 kilograms has definitely risen sharply. Is the guild for sale? I paid 4 million stars to buy this jadeite. I gave 4.5 million. I gave out 5 million star coins, and no one should be higher than me. A group of people took the opportunity to shout the price, but they were quickly swept away by other barrages. Brothers and sisters, hurry up and put big up on the public screen for me. For a time, the live broadcast room was overwhelmed by the big rise on the screen. The candidates who chose the number 12 breathed a sigh of relief and could not wait to shout to the sky. They got it right. With this 5-point advantage, it is enough to open up a lot of rankings. At this time, the president of the Stone Gambling Guild, who had been watching, smiled and motioned for the camera to cut to him. The light screen quickly switched to the chairman's smiling face. The people who were still watching the ice seed floating flower jade at close range were bounced out of the virtual space. When they were at a loss, they heard the voice of the president of the Stone Gambling Guild. This piece of wool has indeed produced ice jadeite, but it's not a bet. The barrage suddenly exploded. How could this not be a bet? The ice jadeite has come out. Is it a bet to open the best glass kind? Ning Yuxuan also frowned. What does the president mean? The president of the Stone Gambling Association did not answer directly, but instead asked a question. Let's talk about it. What is a rise in gambling? Naturally, the price of jadeite bet is higher than the price of rough stone. This is basic common sense. Even people who don't gamble on stones know that many people have posted a bullet screen, and this sentence has been scrolling on the screen. The president stroked his beard and said with a smile, "That's right, Lu Yuan. You listed all the prices for the 55 rough stones purchased this time." Ning Yuxuan's face turned pale, and she suddenly had a bad premonition. Lu Yuan quickly projected the price of wool material on the light screen. People in the live broadcast room watched one by one, and when they saw the price of wool material number 12, they all lost their voices. It actually cost 6 million stars? Ning Yuxuan muttered to herself, her expression erratic. She has been in contact with gambling stones since she was a child, and she naturally knew that the piece of ice floating jadeite she solved was not big, and it was not bad to be able to auction 5 million star coins, but it was still far from the price of the original stone. Gambled down. This cognition appeared in Ning Yuxuan's mind very clearly. Looking at this piece of wool now, she didn't know how to face it with her emotions. How could the white salt sand skin that performed so well be less than 5 million stars? Taking a step back, the examination questions of the assessment will not be so simple. I blame myself for being too conceited. I made a judgment the moment I saw this piece of wool. I never thought that there would be other possibilities. The top 10 this time are doomed to miss me. Ning Yuxuan was annoyed when suddenly, Bai Jing's figure flashed in front of her eyes. If it was him, he wouldn't make such a mistake. After spending most of the day, all 55 pieces of wool material were finally solved, and 3 pieces of jadeite were issued, number 12, 33, and 41 respectively. Number 12 white salt sandskin wool is the most unfortunate. Although the ice-type floating flower jadeite was produced, it did not increase the bet. Number 33 Haiwasha wool has a 1.7 kilograms glutinous being green jadeite. The auction price is 600,000 star coins, far exceeding the rough stone price of 30,000 star coins, which is a veritable surge. The wool of number 41 was mediocre, with no pine flowers or python belts on the surface, but a 6.9 kilogram cyan jadeite was unearthed. The auction price was 60,000 star coins, which was nearly 10 times the price of the original stone. The audience in the live broadcast room was fortunate enough to witness a wonderful calcite live broadcast. After smashing a wave of gifts, they left with satisfaction. And nearly 90% of the candidates looked gloomy after the results of the calcification were announced, and they were destined to miss the top 100 with their results and could only fight again next year. Bai Jing also benefited a lot from today's live broadcast. He thought that he had observed carefully enough and had a good grasp of the basic knowledge of the field, but after the explanation of the 6th-level stone gambler Lu Yuan, he found that he still had a lot to improve. The 6 pieces of wool that Bai Jing could not identify in the examination room were not difficult in Lu Yuan's hands. Lu originally washed the wool material several times with the help of the clean water next to it, until all the sediment on the leather shell was washed away, revealing the original and clearest skin of the rough stone. In this way, there is no trace of any tiny traces to hide. If you observe carefully, you can see the fine lines formed by the wool material with the movement of the planet's crust. Even if there were only a few light-colored marks the size of sand grains on the wool, Lu Yuan could find them all, and with the only evidence, he could accurately determine the location of the wool. Among them, there was a piece of yellow sand skin that could not find any clues from the surface, so he picked up and scraped the minerals and ringworm on the surface of the skin with a knife. It can also be concluded that Bai Jing is amazed. The master is worthy of being a master. When Bai Jing saw these pieces of wool, he only felt that there was no way to go, and even had the idea that no one could identify it. He never thought that there were so many ways to identify the field, and this live broadcast taught him a good lesson. Everything in the world has traces to follow. If you can't find it everywhere, it's not that there are no traces, but the observation is not meticulous enough, and the effort is not enough. The end of this live broadcast represents the announcement of the answers to the practice assessment. Bai Jing calculated his score in his heart. 2 of the 6 pieces of wool were answered correctly by luck, and 2 points were awarded and 4 points were deducted. He is confident in theoretical knowledge, and the deduction will never exceed 2 points, so the total score should be above 94 points. I hope to get the top 10 in this assessment. Bai Jing thought about it this way, and wrote down today's experience and knowledge in his notebook little by little. In just over a month, he has used up 5 notebooks. This level of effort is unmatched. Likewise, his growth rate is also unmatched. In the early morning 2 days later, The official website of the Stone Gambling Association released the list of candidates for the Gambling Stone Apprenticeship Assessment. The candidates ranked in the top 100. When seeing this list, everyone was shocked, and Xinguang was almost paralyzed. Chapter 19. First place, Du Xingyu, assessment score, 96 points, from Capital Star Headquarters. Second place, Bai Jing, assessment score, 96 points, from the Proxima branch. Third place, Tang Ling, assessment score, 91 points, from Capital Star Headquarters. Fourth place, Luo Minghan, assessment score, 90.5 points, from Capital Star Headquarters. Fuck, am I dazzled? Who is this Bai Jing, who can tie for the first place with Du Xingyu? This is the common thought in everyone's mind after seeing the ranking. Who is Du Xingyu? The young master of the Du family, the second largest wool miner in the empire, the favorite son of the 7th-level stone gambler Master Du Feng, and the younger brother of the genius stone gambler Du Jingya. Since childhood, he has been loved by thousands of people, has received the highest education, owns the original stone of an entire planet, and has the title of the Little Prince of the Capital Star. No one knows about it in the empire. Since Du Xingyu participated in this stone gambling apprenticeship assessment, he has been the number one in the minds of the citizens of the empire, unshakable. But no one would have thought that this Bai Jing would get the same score as Du Xingyu. Not only that, but it also exceeded the gap of a full 5 points from the third place. Tang Ling, who ranked third, also came from an extraordinary background. She comes from the Tang family, the first mecha manufacturing family in the empire. Her grandfather is the strongest mecha maker in the empire and is the jewel of the Tang family. Because Tang Ling loved stone gambling since childhood, Mr. Tang specially invited the 7th-level stone gambler Master Rong Xian to teach her baby granddaughter. Although she was not an official disciple, she had received absolutely professional guidance. And this time, she could only rank third, a full 5 points behind Bai Jing, who was second. In previous years, the candidates of Capital Star will definitely take the top 5 in the assessment, which has not changed for many years. But the white scene that turned out this time completely shattered the myth that had been in the air for decades. It was a miracle. Everyone just watched the live broadcast of the Stone Gambling Association 2 days ago, and they knew that this topic was extremely perverted. Under this difficulty, this person could still get the limit of 96 points, which is really terrifying. If it is not for the candidates with the same score, they will be ranked according to the strength of the guild, and the Capital Star headquarters is ranked before the Proximity Star Guild. He is the first. God, this white scene is simply a dark horse within a dark horse. People searched for Bai Jing on the Star Network, but they did not find any relevant information about him, nor did they find any planet with a noble family surnamed Bai, so they could not help but suspect. Could this person be the pseudonym of the young master of the Capital Star? Who is he? Then, #who is Bai Jing ## Du Xingyu, and Bai Jing tied for the first place ## the biggest dark horse of the current Gambling Stone Apprentice Assessment #. The 3 entries quickly occupied the top 3 hot searches on StarNet at a rocket-like speed. Du Xingyu was also surprised when he saw the ranking. Who is Bai Jing? No, not right. In a flash, he thought of the commoner who walked out of the examination room almost at the same time as him after the 2 examinations were over. That person's exam room happened to be the number 6 exam room where Proxima Centauri candidates were. Du Xingyu can almost be sure that it is him. He is Bai Jing. The most ridiculous thing is that, at that time, I thought that the other party would leave the examination room early because he could not answer the question. Thinking of this, Du Xingyu's face was a little hot. His blue eyes were a little overwhelmed, and he squinted at each other with mocking eyes. Ah, what a shame. What would Bai Jing think of him? The usually mighty little prince threw himself on the bed and covered his flushed face with a quilt. The housekeeper didn't even go down when the housekeeper came to ask him to eat. The person being mocked should be him. What face does he have to eat? Ning Yuxuan looked at her ranking. The 12th place, the assessment score, 85 points. Then his eyes moved upwards, and he stayed in the 2nd place for a long time. In the end, he sighed softly, and he was convinced that he lost for the first time. Bai Jing read the list of past exams from beginning to end, with a clear smile on his lips. Not only because he achieved the top 10 as he wished, but also because 2 of his friends passed the test. As soon as he logged out of the website, the optical brain communication rang. Bai Jing was connected, and little fat Jean Mao's excited roar came out from his brain, mixed with obvious crying. Brother Jing, I passed. I finally passed this time. It's the ninth 19. Bai Jing waited for his emotions to calm down a little before he smiled and said, Congratulations? Jane Mao snorted, Brother Jing, it's really thanks to you. If it wasn't for you, I would have to take the exam for another year. Bai Jing answered his questions patiently every time, and finally refined the key points for him and Ngu. If it weren't for the other party, he would definitely be cool with such a difficult test question, and he would have to continue next year. Bai Jing didn't take credit. This is the result of your own efforts, even without me. Jian Mao smiled. I know it in my heart, but I still have to thank Brother Jing for the praise. Then he snorted softly. Damn, that boy Ngu, who quietly took the 20th exam, is much better than me. Oh, by the way, I reserved a table at the Imperial Rose restaurant. I will treat you tomorrow. You and Ngu must come. After a while, Ngu also called by video communication. His eyes were red, and it was obvious that he had just cried. Ngu has been restless for the past few days, unable to sleep at night. Maybe for others, this exam will only have to wait until next year to fight again. But for someone like him who came from a slum and is funded by an aristocratic family, there is only one chance. Without the funding from the Shin family, he could not even pay for the training expenses and the travel expenses to the capital star. Ngu stayed up all night last night, anxiously waiting for the result. The moment he saw the ranking, the pressure he had accumulated for a long time was finally released, causing him to burst into tears. This time, he not only passed the assessment steadily, but also made the top 30. The Shin family was very satisfied with him and planned to support him for a long time. Ngu looked at the 50,000 star coins transferred from Guang's brain and was very excited. He was finally able to continue gambling stones. Bai Jing, thank you. Ngu bowed deeply towards Bai Jing in the video. If it weren't for the other party, he might be able to pass the assessment, but he would never get such a high ranking. The Shin family not only sponsored him, but if he could not stand out among the common people, he would not be eligible for this fee. After the video ended, Bai Jing was about to turn off the optical brain, and the communicator beeped again. Gu Yuanchao requested to communicate with you via video. A look of surprise flashed across Bai Jing's eyes, and he immediately connected to the video. A man dressed in a tall and straight black military uniform appeared in the light screen. His handsome features were sharp and charming, and his deep eyes were fixed on Bai Jing. Congratulations, you passed the examination with the first place. The long eyelashes behind the Bai Jing lens blinked. Thank you, but it's not the first, it's the second. No, in my heart, you are well-deserved number one. Du Xingyu is just taking the title of capital star. Gu Yuanchao looked at him with undisguised admiration. Bai Jing, you always impress me. Bai Jing politely thanked him, but he was a little puzzled. Is the video of Mr. Gu and him just to say this? Gu Yuanchao coughed lightly, and a rare trace of annoyance flashed in his black eyes. Because he had a good family background since childhood, he really had no experience in complimenting others. I wonder if the other party could feel his sincerity? Gu Yuanchao, well, I prepared a gift for you. Remember to come to Gu's stone gambling shop tomorrow, and I will ask Xiaoan to wait for you at the entrance on the second floor. Bai Jing frowned as he looked at the light screen that suddenly blacked out. Gift for him? Forget it. Let's fill up the stomach first. Near noon, Bai Jing made a hearty lunch, with tomato brisket, small fried pork, and seaweed egg drop soup, and had a delicious meal. He was enjoying the food, but he didn't know that the Proxima Star Guild and Star Network had already caused an uproar. Since the appearance of the tag hashtag #BeijingHo hashtag, people on Xinguang have been searching for his information more frantically, but after searching for a long time, they have not found any useful information, not even Xingyu account. The star field is equivalent to the WB of the Earth and is the fastest channel for information exchange. Once there is any trouble, everyone will publish it on the star domain as soon as possible, and almost every citizen of the empire has their own star domain account. But Bai Jing didn't, adding a touch of mystery to his identity. So people started to speculate. Some people say that he is the young master of a certain family, and some people think that he is a descendant of a stone gambling family, or even the proud disciple of a senior stone gambling master. In short, there are various speculations. But what they didn't know was that Bai Jing really didn't have a Xingyu account, and he didn't need it for the time being. Until an insider broke the news that Bai Jing was a civilian. It could be said that one stone stirred up 1,000 waves. Civilian? How could a commoner overwhelm many of the most highly educated nobles? The news was nothing short of a bombshell. The empire has a clear hierarchy. Nobles and noble families hold various resources and lifelines, while commoners have low status, and the slums are left unattended. They are left to fend for themselves. After this incident, many people can't help but think, will background and education bury talents? There are even calls for better education for civilians. The major noble families gritted their teeth bitterly and jointly suppressed the entries related to Bai Jing and quickly replaced the more popular celebrities. Gu Yuanchao has been sending people to pay attention to the movements of Xinguang and to remove all hidden dangers that may threaten Bai Jing. He believes that with the temperament of the other party, he will definitely not like to be noticed by others all the time, and his identity will be picked up so that his information will be exposed to everyone. Gu Yuanchao thought of Bai Jing's water-clear, extremely beautiful brown eyes, as well as the thick, black-framed eyes on the bridge of the other's nose. He gently pressed his chest and hooked his lips silently. At the same time, the Proxima branch. After seeing the ranking announced on the official website of the Stone Gambling Association, President Zhua was so excited that he couldn't help himself. A total of 16 people from their planet passed the assessment in the top 100. I don't know how many times better than last year. Especially the candidate named Bai Jing, who surpassed the group of Heaven's favorites from Capital Star, broke the curse of the previous year, and got the second place proudly. Even with him alone, the position of the third largest guild of the Proxima Centauri Guild has been preserved. President Zhua immediately issued a notice to award Bai Jing a bonus of 1 million stars in the name of the Proxima Star Guild. A mere 1 million star coins is nothing to the status of the entire branch. If Bai Jing becomes a stronger stone gambler in the future, their guild will have a steady stream of benefits, so why not do it? Chapter 20. Bai Jing received a notice from the teacher Gao Ling to ask all the students who passed the assessment to come to the gambling club as soon as possible. At that time, the Proxima branch president will issue them corresponding silver badges. By the time he arrived on the levitating train, the little fat man Jin Mao, Gu, and Ning Yuxuan had basically arrived. A total of 16 people passed the assessment this time, of which there were only 3 civilians, including him and Gu. When Bai Jing walked towards them calmly, the eyes of these people looking at him were very complicated. It is difficult for many noble children to accept that they have been surpassed by a commoner, but the fact makes them have to believe it. The ridiculous thing is that this commoner has surpassed them, and even the group of Heaven's favored people from the Capital Star has been crushed. Thinking of this, the unwillingness in the hearts of the teenagers suddenly decreased a lot. President Zhua is here. The sharp-eyed students saw a middle-aged man in a white robe walking towards them. The silver badge on his chest showed the word Lu, and a group of stone gamblers followed, and they knew that this was a branch of Proxima Centauri. They all stood up straight and saluted respectfully. President Zhua is an honorable 6th-level stone gambler. The stone gamblers are divided into grades. 1 to 3 are low-level stone gamblers, 4 to 5 are intermediate stone gamblers, and above 6 are called senior stone gamblers. There are no more than 50 senior stone gamblers in the entire empire, and each of them is highly respected and has a very high status, which is the height that all stone gamblers dream of. Chairman Zhua Fangxing didn't have the usual serious expression on his face, but instead had an obvious smile. He walked over to Bai Jing and patted him on the shoulder affectionately. Bai Jing, you did a great job this time, and the guild has decided to award you a bonus of 1 million stars. If you have any questions about stone gambling in the future, you can come to me at any time. As soon as these words came out, all the noble children looked at Bai Jing with deep jealousy in their eyes. The reward of 1 million stars may not be much to them, but it is a great luck to get the guidance of a 6th-level stone gambler. Thank you, President. Bai Jing bowed and saluted, not as ecstatic as everyone imagined, but looked calm, neither humble nor arrogant. President Zhua nodded secretly in his heart. To have such a flattering attitude at this age, this son will be extraordinary in the future. At that moment, he even had the idea of accepting disciples, but he suppressed it in time. The road of gambling stones for the common people is not easy to go, and he has to look again. Soon, Bai Jing's Guangnao account received 1 million star coins. In addition to the remaining 700,000, he now has 1.7 million star coins in his account, and he has enough capital to bet on stones in the early stage. The assistant next to President Chua handed over a sapphire blue velvet box at the right time, which was the apprentice badge of gambling stones mailed from the headquarters. Open the box. There is a silver regulation about the size of a thumb in the center, with a bright metal color, delicate and small, engraved with the exclusive pentagram pattern of the Stone Gamblers Guild. President Chua personally put badges on the students who passed the assessment. Among the many badges, only the white scene is different. There is only a pentagram pattern on the badge of the Stone Gambling Apprentice, and there is nothing in the center. And Bai Jing's badge is a circle larger than theirs, with a small one in the middle, which is the symbol of a first-level stone gambler. Everyone looked at President Chua with the badge of a first-level stone gambler for Bai Jing, and they were envious. The first-level stone gambler is the next stage goal for all stone gambler apprentices. The conditions for becoming a first-level stone gambler are: get 5 points. Since becoming a stone gambler apprentice, 1 point will be accumulated for each gamble. 5 points means that the bet has risen 5 times. And at the same time it means that at least dozens of betting stones are required, but Bai Jing directly skipped this step, saving a lot of time and star coins. Ning Yuxuan was ranked 12th and earned 3 points. She turned her head to look at Bai Jing. The girl's eyebrows were still proud, but there was no discrimination and disdain in her eyes. She was wrong. It's so ridiculous. What qualification does she have to discriminate against someone who ranks higher than herself? Bai Jing proved to her with practical actions that birth does not mean anything. From a commoner background, he used his strength to slap these children of aristocratic families with a loud slap in the face. Ning Yuxuan touched the silver badge on her chest and thought in a trance. She will definitely get 5 points as soon as possible and become a first-level stone gambler. Then, follow in the footsteps of Bai Jing. She had a hunch that if she didn't work hard, she would be thrown farther by the other party. I don't know since when, Bai Jing has become the target she wants to chase, where her eyes are, and the person she wants to be. Early the next morning, Bai Jing took the suspended train to Gu's stone gambling shop. Qiaoan had been waiting in front of the door and took him to the second floor from a hidden passage. Although he has been here several times, every time Bai Jing enters, he still has an unreal feeling that he is separated from the original space. The entrance is pure white. The empty corridor seems to be invisible at a glance, and the lights extend inward with the movement of the two people, full of technology. A floating halo flickered on the smooth wall. According to Qiaoan, this was some kind of high-tech protective wall, and even the most powerful super laser cannon could not shake it. After Qiaoan performed iris and genetic identification, the circular pressure door slowly opened, and the space inside was huge, but Bai Jing saw the man sitting on the leather sofa at a glance. The straight military uniform outlines Gu Yuanchao's slender and tall figure. In Bai Jing's eyes, every muscle wrapped under the military uniform is full of strength, perfect to the extreme. His sitting posture is very casual, but he exudes an air that cannot be ignored. Come and sit. Gu Yuanchao raised his eyebrows and motioned for Bai Jing to sit opposite. Just as Bai Jing sat down, a rectangular box was pushed over by the other party. The box is made of some unknown material. The whole body is silver gray, with a metallic texture. It is engraved with complicated patterns. There is a logo abbreviation in the upper right corner, LS. If Bai Jing knows the brand, you can find that this is the abbreviation of Roche, the largest weapons manufacturer in the empire, and it is also the only partner of the imperial military weapons. Every weapon manufactured by Roche is a high-quality product and is never sold to the public. It can only be purchased through special channels. Bai Jing opened the box, and an extraordinarily delicate silver pistol appeared in front of him. Gu Yuanchao. This is the latest energy gun codenamed L9 developed by Roche, with a length of 203 millimeters, a weight of 0.58 kilograms, a bullet velocity of 1,500 meters per second, an effective range of 100 m, and a caliber of 4.5 to 9 millimeters. Hearing the introduction of the other party, Bai Jing's beautiful eyes widened slightly. This energy gun is several times faster than the guns he used in the past in terms of initial speed and range, and its performance is unbelievably high. His white fingertips lightly touched the silver barrel of the energy gun. The touch was smooth. The lines were smooth, light and compact, exuding the cold feeling unique to high-grade metals, which made him reluctant to put it down for a while. Gu Yuanchao. This L9 is equipped with the newly developed air compression technology inside. No need to refill bullets, just pull the trigger. The air compressed to the extreme is enough to shoot through any kind of metal, even intermediate mechas. Not only that, but it also has auto-aiming and focusing technology that even inexperienced people can pick up quickly. Gu Yuanchao's deep black eyes looked at Bai Jing. I think this energy gun is very suitable for you. Do you like it? For some reason, while waiting for the young man to answer, his Adam's apple rolled involuntarily, and there was a trace of unnoticeable tension. Well, I like it very much. Bai Jing raised his head and showed a bright smile at Gu Yuanchao. That smile was clean, clear, bright, and natural, as if a beam of light had come in, causing the man on the opposite side to be stunned, his heartbeat suddenly unbalanced. But that smile only lasted for a moment, and soon the boy's eyes fell back on the silver energy gun, and after watching for a long time, he reluctantly moved away. Then, he closed the lid with a snap and pushed it back in front of Gu Yuanchao. Gu Yuanchao, Mim? Bai Jing lowered his eyes. Thank you, but it's too expensive as a gift. I can't accept it. He had seen the energy gun in the window of the Star Network. The gun placed in the first row was not as good as this one in terms of workmanship, speed, or range, but even so, the price was more than 1 million stars. The performance of this gun is so superior, it must be more than 1 million, and it is even possible to double or triple it. Although he likes this energy gun very much, he only has 1.7 million star coins in his account, and he cannot afford it anyway. More importantly, he still owes the other party 38 million for the treatment of gene decay. What qualifications does he have to receive such an expensive gift? He can't be so greedy. Gu Yuanchao looked at Bai Jing's drooping hair. The young man turned his head slightly and turned his eyes away, refusing to look at the box again. Obviously want it. Gu Yuanchao felt an unprecedented pity in his heart. Why is this young man so distressed? He was only 18 years old, and he should be at a high-spirited age. He looked at Bai Jing and said in a soft voice, "Do you remember the agreement we signed? It is agreed that we will pay you 5 million star coins every year. Now that you have become a first-level stone gambler, you have the qualification to participate in the stone gambling battle, and you can advance 2 million stars as the cost of purchasing energy guns." Really? Thank you. Bai Jing's eyes lit up, and his voice was full of joy. It was only at this time that he showed a little innocence that belonged to his age. The silver-gray metal box was pushed back in front of him again, and Bai Jing couldn't wait to pick up the L9. The tiger's mouth held the handle of the gun, and the right index finger was stuck at the place where the trigger was pulled. Chowan stood by and watched his eyelids jump. If Roche's heir knew that the L9 he made by himself was sold by young Master Gu and gave it away, and he only sold it for 2 million star coins, what expression would he make? Thinking of Luo Xiao's hot temper, Chowan couldn't help shivering, and he must not know about this. Gu Yuanchao, do you want to try it? Bai Jing was eager to try. Can you? Gu Yuanchao, of course you can. He gestured to Chao and to hang up a target made of nano-adsorbent material. This material can evenly disperse and absorb the pressure concentrated at a certain point within 1,000th of a second. It is the most commonly used advanced practice material. Chowan picked the largest target, 2 meters in diameter. Although L9 is quick to use, it still takes a long time for inexperienced newcomers to adapt, and he does not want to be affected by bullets. Bai Jing took off his glasses and tucked the broken hair on both sides behind his ears, revealing his delicate facial features and those brown eyes that were as bright as stars, and his eyes became sharp in an instant. He stood at a distance of 20 meters from the target, found the angle facing the bullseye, with his feet about shoulder-width apart. Bai Jing raised his right hand, his arm was straight. His right hand grasped the handle of the gun, and his index finger gently pulled the trigger into a ready-to-fire state. At the same time, the right eye is aimed at the bullseye through the aiming instrument, and the trigger is pulled quickly, and the movement is fast and agile. The air bomb was fired at an extremely high speed, completely missing a trace. Just listen to the sound of bang, and the bullet hits the red heart. A deep bullet dent fell on the bullseye, and then spread out evenly with the shock. What agile movements, what quick marksmanship. Chowan was startled by Bai Jing's hand. Is this inexperienced? It only took less than a second to straighten the posture, aim and shoot. The posture is more standard than many imperial sergeants, and the speed is unparalleled. This slender-looking young man is simply too terrifying. Gu Yuanchao walked behind Bai Jing. His tall body shrouded the teenager. Just now, the action was very standard. Do you want to try something else? Gu Yuanchao motion Xiao, and to replace the target with a virtual moving live target. This kind of difficulty is even more difficult, and it is necessary to predict the position and direction in advance, and at the same time seize the opportunity to hit the target. Bai Jing continued to practice until noon, before he stopped, and his accuracy rate reached an astonishing 98.75%. This is a level that many imperial officers cannot achieve. Bai Jing's forehead was full of beads of sweat, and there were obvious watermarks on his body, which outlined the slender body of the young man. Those beautiful brown eyes were as clear and flawless as if they had been washed with water, making people want to, "There's a bathroom here. Go take a shower and change your clothes." Gu Yuanchao turned his back to Bai Jing, and his magnetic voice was somewhat hoarse. "Well, okay." Bai Jing also felt uncomfortable with the sweat stains on his body, and he wanted to clean it as soon as possible. After the boy walked into the bathroom, Gu Yuanchao's tense body relaxed. He must have been crazy just now. When he saw the misty eyes of the other party, he had the urge to kiss him,